All right. All right. Here we go. Hello, brothers. How are you doing? Hope all is well. Let me go to the comment section. Make sure you guys can hear me. Drop a one. All right. Okay. So this is going to be long but short because this is the it. This is it. This is the end. This will not be discussed except for other chats and things of that nature. Use it as a reference. Use it as a reference. So, what are we discussing right now? Okay, let's get into it. Blackout. Race Traits and Tendencies of the American Negro. Now, this documented a very racist view of the time. Normal. It was published by the American Economic Association and distributed by major publishers in the United States and Britain. Part 2. All right. So, many of your top publishing companies produced this book. He became very popular from this. So, the excoriating and the throwing under the playing wheels of so-called black men gets you money. Just like you have the N ain't, niggas ain't shit. TV shows, movies, novels that are very popular amongst a so-called demographic. And once you put those novels out, and graphic novels and TV shows and movies with as many negative images of so-called black men out, they get popular. They get popular. And they break records. If you wanted to build a machine, and if it was powered by N-words ain't shit in America, it'll break land speed records. It will literally go 7,000 miles per hour on the ground. It'll be powered by hate. Okay, so let's get into it. All right. So, what is this about? Chapter 5, Social Conditions and Their Tendencies. Let's get through this. Let me enlarge that for you guys. Enlarge it one more time. All right. So, see how that looks? Can you guys see it better? Okay. Yeah. So, let's get into it, brothers. Hope everybody can hear me. So, man, since the first encounter, him has made ceaseless progress upwards, but has never been, nor is it now, an equal advance of the whole of the race. Looking back, what we see is the road which he has come. Okay, so this is blah, blah, blah. The social tendencies of the colored race are fairly depicted in the statistics of religion, education, crime, pauperism, and immorality. Okay. The material for a study along these lines is abundant. But, much to my regret, I shall have to confine myself in this part of my work to a very few, the more important social phenomena. Want to space forbids any extended comment on the various statistical tables, which will be given. By most of them will be sufficient, clear. Okay, no exact data at this at the religious condition of the colored race. I wonder what he meant by that. At the time of emancipation are in existence. I don't know if that's so true. I have to go back and look at my sources, but I don't think that's 100% true. Hold on, let me go back. Not completely accurate. And I'll get into that later, why that's not completely accurate. So, but sufficient evidence is at our command to show that the growth of religious association among the colored people has been a very great indeed. In 1860, according to Mr. H.K. Carroll, name sounds familiar, special agent of the census of the church statistics, the great majority of the colored population were either members of the Methodist Episcopal Church South or regular Baptists. It is estimated that there was 275,000 of the former and 250 of the latter, a total of over half a million out of the population. Inaccurate, because there was half a million so-called freemen in the United States at the time. That's inaccurate data. All right. That's just the freemen. We're not talking about the people that were so-called black that were in bondage, or the native indigenous or aboriginal. But I digress. 4,442,000 during the 30 years following the 1860, the membership of the Methodist Episcopal Church South increased amongst the colored to 1,190,860, while the Baptists increased 1,403,599. The later denominations therefore shows a larger increase. In 1890, the census gave a total of 23,462 organizations with 23,770 churches, and 2,673,977 members. Are they active? Of whom 2,594,419 were members of Baptist or Methodist Church. What he's leaving out is the Catholics. He's also leaving out people that believed in Judaism, aka your cryptos. He's also leaving out another segment of Black America, specifically in East, North, and South, and that would be your Wiccans. But, which probably some of his people were, and I'm talking about Frederick Hoffman. Okay, so aggregate number of communicants, 2 million. Baptist, African Methodist, okay. Roman Catholic, yeah. Okay, so he did bring Roman Catholic in there. And your Roman Catholic will more or less be your so-called black people that have ancestry that stretch back to Europe. Okay, directly, like they're newly arriving immigrants or migrants. All right, so let's get back into this. Okay, let's go on to the next page. Let's see if we have anything essential on that. So, scrolling up. A small number of Roman Catholics is surprising, but many be due in part to the fact that the larger number of colored communicants of Catholic churches would be classified as white, since few separate Catholic churches for colored people exist. That is not true. A statement in the Kansas City Catholic gives the number of colored Catholics at about 200,000, a wide variation from the census figures. You see, he doesn't understand why that is the way it is. All right. But he'll figure it out. Okay. So you have 200,000 people that are part of the Catholic Church, but you only have in your chart officially 14,517 right there. How did you miss 180,000, give or take? If you want the exact number, it's 175,483. My math could be a little bit off, but you guys can do the numbers. Okay, that's a pretty large amount that you're miscounting. All right, so colored Catholic congregations, all of which, one exception, have white priests. The exception is in Chicago. That's not true. Chicago did have St. Benedict Catholic high school, and it did have Benedictine chapels and things of that nature. We all know that Benedict was so-called ebony man. The tendency towards individual preference is shown the fact that 265 colored persons were members of the sect known as Old Two Seed in the Spirit Presbyterian Church. I've never heard of that. While 211 were members of the Lutheran Syndiotic Conference. Heard of that? The Lutheran United Synod of the South. Okay. So, hey, what's up, G? Can you hear me? GW, what's up? Make sure he's active. Okay. All right. Now this is interesting. So big shout out to G Dub. All right. All right. He'll be there back in a second. Let him get what he's got to get done. Okay. All right. Let's get back to it. So when G Dub is ready to come through, he'll come through. Hopefully he can hear everything. It is estimated that 26,626,448 of the 1890, most of which has, of course, been accumulated since emancipation. Yeah, so they're putting money in the church, huh? The tendency seems to have rather favorable of the church, although the complaint is not infrequently made. All right. AG Dub, you there? I hear you. All right. He'll come on in a second. Brought him in. All right. So let's go on to the next page. So this is interesting. So let me type something in the message form. All right. Okay. So many come from school wedded to forms of realistic ceremonies and are led off from the masses, believing that education has placed them above other people. Doesn't that sound familiar? So the education of the colored race has formed the subject of so many essays, speeches, and discussions that it might be assumed that little remains to be added to the massive information and statistical data pertaining to the subject. But this work would be incomplete did I neglect to bring forward some data as the past and present condition of the race of educational standpoint. The abundance of statistics and education are they, in fail many respects, afford a true picture of the intellectual progress of race. It is more in the effects, or rather in the expected results of education, that we must look at the value of educational process applied to the elevation of race from slavery to citizenship. Now, we discussed Mohawk Conference. Okay, the Mohawk Conference discussed the formations of your educational system, what it was meant for, and we see the same aspects within what happened in the past, what happens now. They would deem themselves to be above other people just because they have a haughty-taughty degree. However, they didn't believe so. And he had condescending statements up from that previous statement and paragraph about what he thought about Negro education. So be it. G-Dub.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah. My fault.
No, it was my fault because I was just feeding when you sent out that message on Discord. I was just feeding my cats, and I'm about to make me something to eat.
Okay. So right now we're in chapter 5. We've only got about 2 pages in.
Oh, okay.
So you ain't missed nothing.
Okay. Oh, so what's this book about?
This,
I mean, it looks familiar, but I'm trying. Oh, this is the Race Traits and Tendencies of the Negro, or the?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And so we've already got through chapter 1 through 4. All we have to do is get through 5 and 6, and that's it.
Now,
that's the end.
Here's my discrepancy of the so-called white population at the time.
Okay.
All right. And I've been saying this for a long time. A lot of people get mad at me for saying this. and that's including conservative whites and conservative Negroes. They hear the term, oh, well, there's 220 million of white people today. Like, no, it's not. You think, what do you mean? If you look at the numbers back then, do you know how long it takes to get up to 100 million? When during the 1800s, as you read it right now, that's in the midst of the Victorian period, there
Right.
were no more than 800,000 to a million of them, give or take. And that's not counting the immigrants that they were importing here, because majority of the immigrants were from Europe. They were white. I'm
Right.
like, how? Okay, you imported like say roughly a total of 10 million white immigrants within a span of 100 years. It took 100 years to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long time. It took 100 years to get 10 million. I like, but their birth records do not show that they produced 10 million homegrown here. So where the 220 million came from?
Interesting quagmire.
I mean, if you look at the population of the South, that's the white population of the South, right?
Right.
In 1850.
Mm-hmm.
That's 115,331. Okay? Now, you got the illiterates are about half of that, or close to half of that.
Yep.
And the prestige is like another half, give or take. So the majority of whites were illiterate on top of it.
Yeah.
And they were illiterate for generations. I mean, when I say generations, we talk about centuries, folks. We talk about like before the formation of the United States, or the Union States at the time, we still considered the Union States. They were still considered illiterate and criminals.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm scratching my head. How the hell did this, and combined with the North and South, which is say over 200,000, turn into 220 million? Well, there's a thing you need to look up once you're done with this book called Paper Genocide. And that will confirm it, because even with today's immigrants, my dad's an immigrant. My late father's an immigrant. So if he was alive, he would inform you about this. That they had immigrants from, and my father's from Jamaica, so he had a dark. I explained this to you last night. He had a dark hue.
Yeah.
So my dad, he said, like, even people that come from North Africa with dark hue, that's darker than him, they check the box white. And the reason is it's a financial incentive. It's a tax-saving financial incentive. So you got immigrants that's coming here paying least amount of taxes, even if they become a U.S. citizen. Okay? Long as they check that box white. And number two, long as they don't intermarry with the U.S. population. My dad always broke the ladder. You know, he met my mother, because my mother's from here.
Okay.
So, and he's like telling me, say like, yo, so this is why you got a lot of immigrants that think they're better than you. They don't just think that they're better than, say, Black Americans. They think they're better than anybody here, and they think they're the future replacement. And that's been the condition. And this is slightly before the Ellis Island Project.
Yeah.
But I could say from 1800, if not 1780, all the way up to 1942, they were bringing hordes of immigrants here, because the white descendant the European population that was here during the colonization wasn't populated at all. They actually, after the second generation, they wasn't producing no children.
Yes. And you also have the fact that, that chart on the side, he kind of fudged the numbers with the illiteracy rates, because that's
correct
for Negroes. So,
yeah.
Of course, as you know, a lot of so-called Black men at that time went straight into trades and skill-based work.
Yeah, vocational work,
yeah,
basically.
and we discussed this around the the Mohawk Conference all the way back
Oh my
2017.
God! Like people forget about the Mohawk Conference. This is how
Yeah,
black people got duped into religion.
right.
It was through the Mohawk Conference because people don't understand that black indigenous Americans, that a lot of people like to be called African Americans today, were not religious. I mean, we were spiritual people, but we were not religious. We did not believe in a thing called the church. We did not believe in a thing called the Bible. That was indoctrinated throughout the 1800s. It took 100 years for that to be successful. And they held a conference once every presidential election. That means once every 4 years. And that's how these so-called natives gained the reformation status for Indian reservations. But they didn't realize they got set and duped into
Oh yeah,
prisons. So they got themselves set up to a prison colony. That's what reservation really is.
pretty much. With the white population here in well, so-called white, because
Yes.
in Michigan,
Yes.
we have a Detroit historical book, and it actually discusses the immigrants. And you can get it from well, you can't get it. You got to go to the library, and you can
Yeah.
read it.
Mm-hmm.
And it discussed the early onset of Detroit history, 1800s. Of course, it went back into the era when France once had it as a prison colony and it
Correct.
had white slaves and things like that. But we're
Yes.
talking after 1890.
Uh-huh.
1890, Detroit had a 14% illiteracy rate amongst Europeans, that for European Americans that go so-called white, that were
Yeah.
just illiterate, functionally
Correct.
illiterate, couldn't read. And yeah, and I surmise that quite a bit of your big cities, New York
Yes.
City,
See? Yep.
probably had an equal amount.
Yeah. New York City, any metropolitan area, Atlanta,
Yeah.
Nashville, what you would call it, Richmond, Jersey City,
Mhm.
you know, Rochelle, New York, was it Chicago? Now people don't realize that Chicago was founded by a mulatto black Haitian.
Yep.
And I did it. I think I did. Yeah, I did a video on it, and it was a sad story how it was found, how it was discovered. It was discovered back in 1969 by accident. It was a freak accident, and they try to hide it. And majority of Chicagoans or people, actually majority of people in Illinois knows about this. But you know, the so-called powers to be hid it for public. I mean, people fail to realize that there were a lot of your major metropolitan areas were started by blacks in this country. Even foreign or domestic, it was started by blacks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even after he passed away, the founder of Chicago, there were other blacks that helped to maintain it and kept it going. You didn't start seeing whites really play a major role in Chicago, and this is during the 1800s around this time. During in the middle of the Civil War, before Abraham Lincoln got assassinated.
Yeah.
I mean, until like the early 1920s.
Well, yeah, and a lot of the fur traders in the
Mhm.
Midwest were actually indigenous black men, because
Correct.
they couldn't actually trade. Like, you have a fur company in Michigan called it's not Siemens, but it's a French name.
Mm-hmm.
Siemens is a diamond company, and the French name for the fur company slips my mind.
I know you're talking
However,
about. I totally forgot the name exactly, but I know what
yeah,
you're talking about.
yes.
And it's still
However,
around to this day.
yep, they actually use black, well, so-called black indigenous fur traders that would go in, purchase the furs, negotiate, talk to the different tribes, bring it back to him. Dietrich furs. That's
Yeah,
what it
thank you
is.
for it. Yep, that's right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. So some of the most wealthy fur traders were ebony men,
Yeah.
specifically indigenous.
And matter of fact, their descendants, their families are still alive.
Mhm.
Which was shocking to me personally. You're like, oh wow. Now I didn't know that until I was like 16 years old. I started digging, dove into Midwestern history at that point.
Yep.
A lot of people don't know that Pontiac um, is actually a nation territory in the Midwest.
Yeah.
So that the Pontiac tribe donated land to, I forgot the French guy, the black French guy that came from Haiti, to create Chicago.
Yeah.
But they gave him over, like, because people don't understand. The only way you can tell you're the Midwest is you smell wild onions. That's how you know you're in the Midwest. You smell wild onions. I mean, all the way from Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota. You can smell wild onions. And they gave, I think, part of their wild onion farm that was over in Illinois, and that was owned by the Pontiac Nation, was by indigenous ebony men and ebony women.
Yeah. Well, you have pictures of them right
Yeah.
now on hockey teams. The
Thank
Chicago
you. Thank
Blackhawks.
you. Yep. Yeah. I try to tell people, like, look, a lot of these white elites know who you are,
Mhm.
and they tell it to you in a subtle way to your face, and you just don't know because you've been taught that since the so-called Black Power movement and the root slave narrative that was fictitious history, that you came from a landmass, because a lot of people don't know that when these so-called white explorers, quote unquote, traveled around the world, they were shocked that there were more people with darker hue than
Exactly.
people that look like them. I mean, they were shocked. It didn't matter what type of phenotypical skull structure they had or bone structure they had. They all had something common. They were pretty much considered black. Okay, from South Asia to Southeast Asia, even to East Asia in the Eastern Hemisphere. Then when they went to the Western Hemisphere, they saw the exact same thing, and they're like, "Wow, we this small group," and it's amazing. But the so-called illiteracy rate among Negroes, a lot of people don't know that the reason why they consider them illiterate because a lot of Negro people, male and female, did not went to public schools. A lot of people don't know that schools didn't became public until 1837. Then 30 years later, because people forget that public schools were private still
Yeah.
until 1837. Then they became federal and state mandated to be public only in 1867. This is right after the Civil War.
And you also had a legendary case in Boston, Massachusetts called Roberts versus Boston,
Yes.
1840.
40.
And it was about a so-called ebony man that was
Mhm.
teaching, and they wanted which you have a little tidbit of the Brown versus Board of Education that took a piece of that case
Mhm.
and used it for, separate is not equal.
Yeah. Yep.
So yes, and if you just study the law, just go through a few laws, you'd be like, oh, what? Wait, hold on one second. So it wasn't illegal to actually go to school in the Northeast for so-called black people.
Yeah. What do you think a lot of white children went to North for? They went for North for better education compared to the South. I
Yeah.
told you that last night. That the
Yeah.
South had a lousy education. A lot of people don't know that. Like, you look at today, I mean, don't get me wrong. The whole American educational system is a messed up system. It's very flawed.
You're right.
But if you compare the northern blue states education system versus the southern red states education system, it's literally light years difference. It's completely different. It's completely different, and you notice it today. Children in the, for example, in the North have better grammar compared to the children in the South. They just have that superior grammar. Like I said before, the American educational system do not teach you nothing but how to be an obedient worker.
Yeah. Well, that it's funded by industrialists. So
Yes.
it would make sense for them to want you to be just efficient workers. So I mean,
Yeah. Like a lot of people say, "Oh, I got my education," and like, yeah, okay, your education does not mean you have the cognitive ability to solve problems. Your education means you have the ability to get a job.
yeah,
That's it. You do not have no ability to prove to me that you're more intelligent than I am. You might be smart because only animals are smart. In other words, you can train an animal. They said the smartest people are the dumbest people. You ever been inside a room full of smart people? One thing you learn, you end up being the most intelligent person in that entire room because everybody else they go by what they're being told. They're not
right,
going by what they learn and what they gain. They're not going by foresight or first-hand experience. They're not going by that. They're not going by actual data. They're going by opinion. Hey, I went by the book. Well, that book was created by opinion.
hmm.
You know, you're not you're not actually learning. You're not contrast and compare. And that's where we'll learn, like, because people look at learning in a robotic being taught like because we live in a Pavlovian society. Let's cut the chase.
Yeah,
People are not being taught to compare and contrast history, science, math, language. You're not being taught that very well. So you're not learning how to figure it out on your own, like majority of people. You're not learning to compare other experiences to your own, and vice versa. Like, this mainstream knowledge is garbage. And the so-called illiteracy rate, because like I said before, black people or indigenous ethnic people did not went to public schools like that. They were homeschooled for the majority of the time. So of course they're going to review them as illiterate because they were never documented, went to school to be conformed. Because you got to remember, the white diaspora infrastructure and culture is conformality.
right.
That's how they were able to be manipulated and controlled over Europe to this very day into the New World.
That has been uttered
Mm-hmm.
by many great minds. They
Right.
do like to conform.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
that,
We're not talking about, for the audience out there, we're not talking about hierarchy. Hierarchy is usually a natural order.
right.
Okay. Mainly based on age and experience and old age respect. You hear that a lot in East Orient, the old age respect.
Exactly.
Even if a person's a year older than you, that person has a leg up on you. You show respect. That's what it comes down to. But conformality is a form of actually mental slavery. That's basically what conformality is. Or they now they use that as a marketing tool for consumerism.
Yeah.
That's like the modern day conformality practices. Like a lot of people don't know that. Do you know that there's like at best 50 billion plus people in the world that are white with blonde hair, blue eyes? They're a dying breed. But yet you see white women dye their hair blonde hair. And some that were born with brown or hazel eyes, they put on blue eye contacts because they try to conform into the so-called ideology what white men think what a attractive white woman or a woman supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And a lot of them look hideous. Sounds messed up, what I just said, but this is actual reality. That's another form of conformality. I just use that as
As an example, yeah.
an example. And
But hey, if that's if that's what they like, hey, go for it. You know, I'm not here to tell a man what he should do with his tallywhacker,
Right.
as Dr. Kitty Cochran Jones would say.
Mm-hmm.
So if they like it, I love it. Good for them.
Yeah.
Okay, so in most southern states, education of slaves was forbidden by law. In Georgia,
Correct.
A law had been in force since 1770, which reads as follows: all and every person and persons whatsoever who shall hereafter teach or cause any slave or slaves to be taught to write or read writing, or shall use to employ a slave as a scribe in any manner of writing whatsoever, ever such person and persons shall forever offense forfeit the sum of 20 pounds sterling. In 1829, another law was passed which substitutes a fine and whipping and imprisonment in a common jail as a punishment for education of slaves. The attempts to educate the slaves and instruct them in religious principles had, however, been made since 1705 by the Society of Propagation of the Gospel of Foreign Lands in 1752. It was reported in the proceedings of the society and Flourish Negro School was taught in Charleston by a Negro of society under inspection and direction of the worthy, what is that? Worthy rector?
Yeah, yeah, that's what it says. Worthy rector. Um,
Garden. What the
yeah,
hell is a worthy rector? That's something I've never heard before.
that's a pseudo hierarchy official.
Okay, all right, all right.
Yeah, it's very pseudo. Like I said before, this is what year was this? Like 1840 or eight? No, I'm sorry, 1752.
Yep.
Because like I said, the board education didn't even exist yet. Schools were private, so these were privatized schools. So people have to pay to send their children to school.
Okay.
But yes, the vast majority of immigrants that were illiterate were white European immigrants. Even during that time frame, they were extremely illiterate. Their parents were illiterate. So we talk about multi-generational of illiteracy. But
So,
I love it when they use the Negroes as being illiterate, and then kind of find out majority of your school teachers.
yeah. So, the first systematic effort to educate the colored people, here's a hijack,
Uh oh.
was made by the American Missionary Association in 1861. Incorrect.
Incorrect.
Through the
That's
opening of,
revision.
yeah, that's revisions.
That's revisionist history at that time frame.
Through the opening of a school for contrabands at Hampton, Virginia.
Oh my
Oh,
god. Oh my god. I just talked about Virginia with you last night, and
yeah,
that's false.
yeah,
That's false. Oh my god.
definitely. In 1863, General Grant placed the duty of the superintendent for colored people of the region, including in the Army operations, in the hands of Reverend John Eaton, who in 1866 had over 770,000 of these people under his charge. But in 1865, change was made in educational works. The Freedmen's Bureau was organized under General Howard. The Bureau continued in existence from January 1865 to August 31st, 1871. That would be towards the tail end of Reconstruction because
Yeah.
Reconstruction ended in 77, 70.
Yeah. 1877.
Yeah. Over $5 million, it is estimated, were expended through it for education of the freedmen. And then, of course, you had the Rosenwald Fund. You remember that, where he
Yeah.
actually built schools. I believe he was the CEO of Sears Roebuck. I could be
Yeah.
wrong. All right. But this is, you can go ahead and cut that to shreds because that is a complete lie.
Yeah.
1861. I don't agree with that in Hampton, Virginia.
Oh no, that's bullshit because I looked it up all kinds of hints. I'm sorry about you hear me curse, but that's baloney because well, you look at the archives in the public library or the National Archives from Hampton, Virginia, wherever you choose, goes in further detail that it's the complete polar opposite what this dude wrote on what Hoffman wrote. Now you gotta remember when he wrote this book, this guy could barely speak a lick of English. He was still German.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that means
Yeah.
he probably had a scribe or someone help him because he probably wrote it in German originally and then had
Yeah,
somebody translate it.
yeah. And since the vast majority of Americans do not know how to translate very well at that time, it's so skewed. It's not even funny. What the hell is this? Hold on. The number of pupils attending institutions of this kind were about 22,963 in 1865. I'm sorry, 1885 to 1886. Against, all right. So the numbers for public school were small. Now people don't realize why that number is so small. People fail to realize that children work more. They made more money than their parents.
Yeah.
So a lot of your warehouse workers working in machinery factories at the time were white children immigrants, and
Yes.
you would see them missing fingers and missing toes, in some cases other limbs like arms and legs from operating gear machinery.
Machinery. Yeah.
Yeah, little girls would get their hair ripped out. This was common because
Yeah.
their parents couldn't make no money. They couldn't generate no income.
And due to the deaths of a lot of these young children, they
Yeah,
start making edicts, laws,
yeah.
policies to
But you know,
change child labor,
but
to
you know who
restrict it.
did, but you know who did that, right? You would think that it'd be a lot of these, white politicians in the country that did that. That's what I thought at a time. Kind of
Yeah.
find it was a lot of black lawmakers that actually correct that,
Hmm.
and it started in the metropolitan areas.
Yeah. They didn't want
But
the kids getting hurt
yeah,
or
not that.
exploited.
Yeah, they cost them a lot of money. This is why you have workman's compensation.
Hmm.
You know, and workman's compensation is a shallow form of self compared to how you're supposed to be earning it. Um, it's a damn shame.
Now, this is interesting. So, you discussed how we're looking at the number of education white and colored pupils in common schools in the south in southern states. So
Right.
that's 2,301,804, and that's in 1880, and then it went up to 3,409,061.
You're in 1890. Now, your mind
Yeah,
by all right.
go
You
ahead.
got to remember, in the South alone, over 850,000 people died
Yellow fever, no,
between
the Civil Wars.
casualties of war and
Yeah,
disease called yellow fever.
yeah.
Okay, or a combination of both.
Hmm.
Some of them died from abscess from war wound infections because
Right, right, right,
the,
right.
the, the southern states did not have hygienic practices when it comes to disinfecting wounds and treating wounds. They have a medical illiteracy rate that's horrible, even
Yeah,
today's standards. Okay, so you had a bullet wound in the South in the 1800s, from 1800 all the way through, say, the 1890s, you were going to die because there were not enough hospitals, and you had veterinarians try to treat wounded soldiers and wounded civilians, and they didn't know what the hell they were doing.
right.
And with rusty old medical tools, I may add. So, with, with that respect, how the hell is like nearly 6 million people exist in those in a 10-year tender,
Yeah, that
unless
doesn't
they
make any
were
sense.
imported. Yeah, unless they import, because you got to remember, the vast majority of the casualty civilian deaths of the South alone were more. There were more innocent civilians that died than soldiers.
Hmm. Because if I'm looking at this right, that will mean that your children, which will be your pupils,
Yeah,
usually amount towards a third or half of your population. So that
correct.
would mean that that'd be about 7 to 8 million people that would be there that would be classified as white. And you had
Mm-hmm.
such a huge swath of them that were just killed off with the war. And those numbers just,
Starvation, lack of
yeah,
water, starvation. I mean, people don't realize that that 4 or 5 year war did a lot of damage to the American economy of the South.
With the starvation piece, I remember don't laugh at me, but I remember watching that movie that was based in that time when I was in school, and it was a romance, and
Hmm.
it was Scarlett, whatever her name was, and she played Going with the Wind. I think that's it.
Okay, yeah,
Is
I know
that
you're talking
right?
about. Yeah, Gone with
Okay.
the Wind.
And they were
On
basically,
cable.
yeah. And they were almost going to starve to death because they couldn't produce enough food, and plus they really hadn't done it in so long. But
Yeah, not to mention the food was used for the military troops.
yeah, yeah.
Like literally, like people had to ration food, and they were starving to death. The children died first. Not to mention, people failed to realize that there was a mini ice age that went on during that time frame. Like it ended not long after 1868, 1870, just before the end of the actually yeah, just before the start of the Reconstruction period. So a lot of people did froze to death on top of starvation, on top of yellow fever, on top of tuberculosis.
Hmm.
So you got to remember a lot of these immigrants that was coming here, they bring in TB
Oh yeah, yeah.
and hepatitis A, B, and C, and syphilis and meningitis. Oh my goodness. How did they have a huge spike on the population, but the so-called colored children population on the bottom of that same time frame period remained stagnant? That would tell me that the Negro people would have been extinct already.
Hmm.
So they counting. That's why I try to tell people. These people counting us as extinct or endangered species. This don't have nothing to do with abortion. This is the earlier formation of paper genocide. You're being right
I
off of history.
I concur. Now, looking at the institutions for higher education of the colored race,
Mhm.
1885 through 86 through 1891,
Yeah.
92, we look at
Hmm.
university institutions of secondary education. That's your finishing schools. Now, finishing schools existed
Yes.
for God knows how long. Black women were able to
Yeah.
go to college and learn how to do bookkeeping and learn how to teach and learn etiquette. There are schools of etiquette and things
Did
of that
you know
nature.
that they were going they was going to those schools even during slavery?
Oh, I know. I know. I know.
And a
I
lot of
know.
people's like, "Oh, that's not true. They were just as enslaved as the black." Like, no, no, no,
No.
sir. You're not understanding. Black women already had education to get better paying jobs while you worked in the fields as a serf, technically not as a slave. That's like I kept saying. A lot of black people in the coming years of the slavery in the South were duped into serfdom more than slavery. The bulk of your slaves came from white
Oh yeah.
immigration, East Asians that were coming here. They were used as slaves to work on the underground system, the railroad system, for 150 years.
My,
The Chinese. They took a lot of Chinese, Mongolians.
mhm.
They took some Tibetans, Japanese, and the Koreans,
Yeah.
and they were implanted
And
there. And then don't forget the conquest of the Philippines by the U.S. So they took some of the Filipinos
yeah.
and
And
Filipinos
what
over here to work on the sugar canes and on the underground mines.
yeah. In California, West Virginia, like we talked about earlier, Kentucky with the coal mines and things like
Mhm.
that. Oh yeah, yeah, I know.
Right.
Universities and colleges, 238 in 1885, 360. And remember, we did a video a while ago, Mohawk Conference, right? Those are mostly women
Right.
in the early
Yes.
1800s. And in 1885, because you had Hampton, which was a women's school. It wasn't open up until
Hmm.
right around that point to men. Before that, it was mostly for women. And
Yeah, it was women for like over a century, I think it was.
you had a few
Oh
other
no.
women colleges at that point. Spelman, which was funded by the
Yep.
Rockefellers.
Mm-hmm.
And they have two halls on Spelman's campus that are named after the two spinster sisters. Well, I don't know if they were sisters, but they were two white women that were spinsters that helped actually teach Rockefeller's wife. So,
Wife. Yes.
a little bit of
And
back
matter of
history.
fact, that's where that's where Spencer came from.
Okay, I see a jump. So that's the instructors. So
It's insane.
238 to
So
369.
they must
Okay,
be
so
referring to females.
most of the instructors were women. All right. And the pupils, 5,119, 8,116. And I guarantee the majority of those pupils were mostly women also, Black women. Mostly.
Yeah.
Let me see. Schools of
Now,
theology.
people will that compared to the male teachers. Yeah.
Okay. I'm looking at these numbers and it's just.
Theology, it doesn't make no sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't add up. And the messed up part is the CDC went by those stupid numbers. So like, wait a minute, you going by? I'm like, oh, no wonder why they're going by these numbers of these so-called pseudo scientific racists and racialists.
Mm-hmm. This is interesting because okay, I'm gonna move past this page because I'm gonna keep on looking at the numbers.
Yeah,
it don't add up. It doesn't add up.
It never did. That's why I said, like, when you saw me did that book about the healthcare system, about that dude, I like, yo, when you read these books, because I used to work on the side a moving company, and you'd be surprised of how many stuff that I move and I come across with like these old books, and some of these white families that I moved their furniture out of their house still have that old book.
So,
and you go laugh, they never read past chapter 1 or chapter 2 of that said book.
Yeah. So crime and pauperism and sexual immorality are without question the greatest hindrance of social and economic progress. That is true. During slavery, the Negro committed fewer crimes. That's interesting. We know that.
Yeah.
Than the white man.
Duh.
Only on rare occasions. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying like that you gotta remember that the white men were being dumped here as criminals to begin with.
Exactly.
I don't know why people don't understand that. And if you compare like a white European man versus a white colonizer, that's what they call people that like whites that's from around the world. They were called colonizers. If people don't understand that that's a racial epithet. So a little turn of cheek by the European or the Euros will refer to like say white Americans. Anywhere throughout the Americas would be called colonizers or white South Africans in the region of South Africa called colonizers, and as well as parts of Southeast Asia, Australia. But one thing they said that like, yo, if you compare, because I went to Europe, I told you that last night.
Yeah.
The Europeans would tell you right up front, the whites that you see in, say, i.e., United States or throughout South America or North America for that matter, these were criminals. So this is why you guys have a high rate of crime compared to Europe. I'm not saying that Europe don't have no crime. We have crime. Don't get me wrong. But if you compare us to the United States, there's no comparison. Our crime is much more like minuscule compared to your crime in the United States. Because the murder rate in the United States alone is atrocious, and it's learned behavior. I mean, you got centuries of people being dumped here just for criminality purposes.
Oh yeah.
So when they keep saying that, oh well, the Negroes are savage and the Negroes this, let me tell you something. I be telling people like, yo, your Negro males, as messed up as it's gonna sound, are more docile into society than say a rageaholic white boy that want to go around and shoot up schools and buildings. Okay, like people don't realize that you got more white families today that are undiagnosed with mental illness than ever before. One person said that. I said, and I beg to differ. Like it's been going on like that for centuries. I mean, people don't realize that around this time there was a huge population spike in the South right after the end of the Civil War. Like I'd
That,
say from was it the Civil War ended in what April, right? Don't quote me
yeah.
on that. All right, it ended in April. So we're gonna say from May of 1865
Mm-hmm.
until sometime around March, March or February of 1866. So about roughly almost about 9 months, close to 9 months after, you saw a 650,000 population increase. Here's the catch. That 650,000 increase was homegrown. A lot of women, black women or ebony women, as they call, had they try to say it was rape, but kind of find out it was not rape. It was they conformed into sexual prostitution at that time because you got to remember a lot of the white troops from the north and south AWOL, and they went to these brothels at the time was led by majority of ebony women, and the ebony women did what they did their business. Within 9 months, they all got. You got imagine 650,000 children being born. I'm surprised a lot of them survived because, like I said, a lack of hospitals and a lack of hygiene. So I'm surprised they don't count those children being born at all, and that's just within 9 month period.
Yeah.
That almost replenished the death rate because you got to remember the South, the Confederacy South, only had like a little bit over 1 million whites, and you add children, it'd be about at best maybe 2 million.
Yeah.
So I like, how the hell do they have nearly 8 million people? That doesn't make no sense because 800,000 adults alone died. That's not counting children.
So what do you think about 1.5 to 2 million people? Pretty much
At
so.
at best, at
Yeah.
best, because that's what I saw in the National Archives. While I looked
Mm.
up my grandparents' genealogy on my mother's side, like that's like, wait a minute, this don't add up. How the hell they? I mean, do you know how long it takes to produce through one mother? I mean, one father and one mother. It would take more than 200 years to get to 200. It takes more than 200 years to get to 100 million people of a particular ethnic group.
Right.
The only way you could speed that up, you would have to have multiple wives. And I keep telling people this: that's not within the so-called Caucasian or white culture. That's not in their culture. They're not known for that. Other cultures have done it. We actually was doing it. That's why they abandoned polygamy in 1942.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know that ebony people would marry their daughters at the age of 15 and 16 up to 1976. It was legal up to 1976, up to 20th century.
Yeah, they tried to put that on the Mormons in Utah for marrying their daughters young and having
Well,
polygamy.
where you think the Mormons got that from? They got that from us.
Yeah. So let's get back into the rest of this paragraph. And
Mhm.
only one rare occasion was the guilty of more atrocious crimes, such as rape and murder of white females, whether from cowardice or respect and devotion to his master. Ugh. He
Oh,
respected the persons of his master's household and had few indeed had, recorded attempts of insurrections and revolt on the part of Southern slave. Criminal statistics of the colored population previous to emancipation are difficult to obtain. And on the account of
oh my God, that was easy to obtain then as well as it is now. What the? Oh
I
my!
told
Revisionist history, man. Keep going.
okay. Difficult to obtain, and on the account of abnormal conditions of servitude would have little value or purpose of comparison with the wholly different conditions of freedom. Okay, I'm done with that paragraph.
Yeah, yeah. That's BS.
That's super cap.
Yeah.
Super cap. Okay.
Whoever did this book on the PDF file, they highlighted all the things that doesn't make no sense. So you look at it like offense against the government at what 9.65%. That's very small.
Right.
Yeah, that's very small. So the original prisoners were white persons only.
Yeah. We
For the
discussed
vast
this.
majority of the time. Yeah.
We discussed this last night. Yeah, you had the majority of the prisons, specifically on the Northeast, that were actually constructed and housed ethnic Europeans. And I don't mean just ethnic Europeans that might be, a little tan. I mean, like, white people. They actually housed them. They were brought in for different crimes. They basically ushered many of them out of Europe due to
crimes over there, pretty much.
Crimes, some different religious belief systems, and you had the whole Catholic and inquisitions and things like that. He has a lot of people that escaped and came over, quote unquote, for religious, and most weren't coming over for religious reasons.
No, they came because they were dumped here as prisoners. That's basically what it is, and a lot of people don't know where the term, because you hear the Europeans say we gotta get rid of this European trash. That's where the term white trash came from. It came from white Europeans referring to these undervalued whites as European trash. Like we gotta get rid of it. We got filth, we got crime, we got degradation, we got illiteracy rates, we got out of control birth rates, we got smog and pollution. We need to get rid of this European trash. So they put them all in ships, not boats, in the 1800s, because by then the steam engine was invented. So a lot of people don't know the difference between a boat and a ship.
Mm-hmm.
A ship is basically a boat with a motor. And they was building steel ships and house these people in like cattle. And they, made a maiden voyage onto the New World. Canada, United States, Mexico, parts of West Indies did not play with that ship because they were at that time they were always expelling them out. That's how they did it. But they found Australia, they found New Zealand and throughout the southern region of Africa to dump these people. They want to clean up Europe. That was the real term. They want to clean up Europe. Europe was too dirty, too filthy to have these people in. That's why you always hear the term, don't have a pot to piss in, the window door out
of. Yeah.
Yeah, that was legit. Like if you was walking on the sidewalk in the middle of the evening, be worried. That's why you saw Europeans umbrellas with them in case that happened. Not because it was raining, because someone would throw out a pot of piss and shit out of the window because they didn't have bathrooms.
Yeah, not very sanitary.
Yeah, so
we look at the proportion of Negro criminals to the total. 29.38%, 30.79%. Okay, proportion of Negro population, 10%, and then 11%. So what I look at is what's not said.
Yes.
And that's right below population over 15 years of age.
Correct.
Now, we discussed peonage, and we'd also discussed a lot of black boys being put into prison for this. We discussed this last night about
Yeah.
the juvenile system and a lot of those black boys getting assault, rape and things of that nature. But peonage was an important facet of industry in
Right.
America, and they would actually trump up these charges and send a lot of these young boys off to prison and get labor. And a lot of these boys would not actually make it because they'd be working in mines, they'd be
Yep.
working in factories, and it was pretty miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And they did have peonage that affected Europeans that came in specifically from lower parts of Europe, and they were just trumped up charges and sent off to prison, and they end up finding themselves in Kentucky or West Virginia working in the coal mines. But this was really pernicious for young so-called black men. Well,
Right.
men, they're boys.
Yeah.
So, and they didn't put that number into statistics because it'll make them look like monsters arresting all these young boys for no
Mm-hmm.
reason.
Right.
Go ahead.
Not to mention, you get a lot of labor of a young boy that's in puberty than you do of a adult male.
Mm-hmm.
You get easy, cheap labor. You don't have to worry about rebellion so much. It's easier to conform a child to do things than the adult. That's why I try to tell people early slaves were used as children more than adults. It's hard to kidnap an adult and try to make them your slave. That's humanly impossible. Male or female, because they're going to try to escape, they're going to rebel, they're going to fight, they're willing to die for their freedom. That's what's ended up happening.
Not according to Roots. Now, now, what they said, Kunta Kinte was captured at 18 years old or 17, which would be a man, according to Roots. And that's my Wikipedia scholar certificate says that.
A fictitious character that never existed in human recorded history that was made up by a Irish Catholic,
mm-hmm.
which actually he took old Irish slavery documentation and conformed it into so-called African history. He never stepped foot in Africa.
No.
Okay, now at that time, people don't realize that technically the Europeans did not step foot in Africa until the 1720s. Literally, the 1720s. Prior to that, the only portion they might have been in Africa is like way north of Africa in the Mediterranean territory, the Rock and Gibraltar area.
Yeah.
Other than that, they never really been to actual parts of Africa, like the Ivory Coast, or now it's called the Gold Coast. They've never been to South Africa. They've never been deep into that continent.
Never. Because they would die from malaria. They will also die from heat stroke. They would starvation. Die from different fevers. Sometimes wars. They would get killed. But you have a book, and I've actually purchased this book, and this was suggested by an Ibmore guy. Shouts out to this book that was suggested, and it was Daughters of the Trade, and that discussed the kind of, I guess you would call them mixed, the mixed children from these marriages.
that started with they intermarried with the pirates. The white pirates were the Danish. The Danish and some of them with the Scots, but mainly Danish and Danish and was the Finnish from Finland. And a lot of these were exiles and criminals. They were not explorers. A lot of people think they are. Like, no, they're not explorers. They were exiles. They were, not to mention, a lot of these European males were scared to go further into that continent because of the black men.
Yeah.
I mean, these people were known for repelling foreign invaders, quick, fast, in a hurry. So they when they finally came in, the women this is the servile nature of women, because a lot of these coastal regions were held by matriarchy tribes or matriarchy city states.
Yeah.
Of statesmen were women, and this is why I said humble historic observation: women do not make great leaders. They just don't, and they allow these guys in. A lot of them will hand their daughters off to breed to produce a white baby, which kind of find they only could produce a hybrid, or a biracial child.
Right.
But it's better than what they look like. So a lot of these tribes in Africa, they would kill each other based on who's darker than who. That's the exact same problem in South Asia today. Who's darker than who? Like, wait a minute, both parties are very dark skinned and jet black. What's the whole premise of it? It's this pseudo European attempt of colonialization in Africa, because they really never really colonized Africa like everybody makes it seem like. They
Nah.
might have ventured there. They might have colonized a seaport here and there, but they never fully. Like I said, the continent is too darn big to colonize. Okay, in a lot of cases, they will use the native inhabitants to do their bidding. That doesn't mean they colonize, because you have to take a portion of your population to go invade another population to colonize, and you can't colonize something that's already occupied.
One telling tale of the fact that they didn't fully colonize Africa is they're still having initiatives to actually make a transnational rail line and road because
Yes,
they just couldn't do it.
correct.
So,
And matter of fact, you saw old ancient attempts of them trying to do it during the colonial times, and it failed.
couldn't do it. Rail line, road, expressway. These are proposals that are actually discussed at different economic conferences and things of that nature to expand economic reach of the Africans there. So they weren't able to do it.
Right.
So,
and they had centuries, and they still failed.
So shouts out to brother from another mother, even though I don't think I have too much of any African in me, but at the end of the day, shouts out to them, and I hope they can build that transnational rail line without the help of other people.
They should. They should. The only little help they should have is maybe they deal with the IMF, for financial reasons. But other than that, they should not get involved with a foreign international, like say a pseudo Belt and Road Initiative that's a failed attempt by the Chinese, and you figure the Chinese would already learn their lesson, stop pushing that, because the new German chancellor canceled that idea out of Europe, as well as the current French president Emmanuel Macron.
Okay.
He's like, no, we're not doing the Belt and Road Initiative, especially after this situation with the coronavirus fiasco. So it's good luck, China, because I don't know how you're going to try to use your so-called neo-colonialism internationally. It's not working. It's not even working during the West Indies. A lot of them got kicked out in the last 7 years. So like, no, you come up here and destroy the land. You're like an invasive species.
Yeah, it worked.
It's not an insult to the Chinese people as a whole, but you got to remember, you bring these low-grade peasants and plebs and slaves to a foreign country where there's different laws, different cultures, different rules, different guidelines, how to do things. And you violate them to the point that, okay, it's created a disruption. And you say, hey, we're supposed to help you. You're supposed to help our people to get work, have gainful employment, boost up our economy. We wasn't expecting you to bring all invasive invaders from your country into ours. We didn't ask for that.
I feel you. So let's look at this breakdown of the
Yeah,
specified
because
offenses committed
yeah,
by prisoners.
right.
1890. So this is 1890.
Mm-hmm.
And because his numbers, I mean, we all know that he had a
It's
very
construed.
racial bent.
Yeah.
So 6,958 for homicide and 2,512. So basically, you have over 4,000 plus that white people committed, because I'm pretty sure it wasn't that
It's
many.
double.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it wasn't that many Chinese people killing people.
No, no. Chinese people were still slaving in the railroad system, believe
Yeah,
it or
at that
not.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were stuck in prison communities like Chinatown, Little Tokyo, and Little Korean towns. That's what they were tossed into. Um, yeah. Then abduction.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Abortion. Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
right. You did prison time for basically assaulting a pregnant woman that triggered abortion
Yeah.
or miscarriage, as they call it. Wow, look at the assault. The assault crime total is 8,001, and so-called colored prisoners is at 3,195. That doesn't make no sense because around this time, this is the end of the Reconstruction period. This is already the beginnings of Jim Crow, started 4 years earlier in 1886.
Mm-hmm.
Last time I checked, you still had black towns being erected left and right. You
Yeah.
had black oil industry. So that number is way misconstrued.
And here is the
Unless
number.
you add children.
Here. Oh shoot, I went to the wrong page. Let me go back.
Okay.
So here is the number right here
Mm-hmm.
that really. This is how I know he's full of it. Right.
Larceny or burglary.
Arson.
Oh my God! Oh no, no.
And you had all those towns, townships, cities that were being burnt down through pogroms or through race riots from 1880 to 1890.
Bullshit. That's
you
baloney.
see that? You see that
Yeah.
right there?
Yeah. Come on. No wonder why I had to put the book down because it was so BS.
And this is the guy that became the president of the insurance company Mutual Life or
Yes.
Prudential. I forget. I think it was
Correct.
Prudential.
It was Prudential.
This is a guy that actually set different policies on life insurance, and his
To this
statistics
day.
were vital.
To this day.
in
Matter of fact, they
forming.
use the exact same life insurance policies onto auto insurance,
Mm-hmm.
homeowners insurance. A lot of people don't know this. Flood, fire, or other forms of natural or hazard insurance on residential and public and private businesses.
Right. You even have to have an insurance to build a home, because you have to have insurance for the workers, health insurance and life insurance policies
Mm-hmm.
in case anything happens. So
Mm-hmm.
these insurances that he influenced are going to affect you, so-called black man.
Yeah.
Let's go on to the next page because he's just
Oh.
capping. I should put a cap emoji up right now. I should put a cap emoji up. He's steady capping. So this is the rest in Philly. You know, Philadelphia has always had a tumultuous past of violence and crime and arrest. Okay. And
But that was the central hub of immigration, though. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
The majority of crimes happen were initiated by immigrants, not colored people.
So we look at arrests in Philly, 1888, 40,305. That's a lot.
Yeah, but how could you house them? Do you know how big the Philadelphia population was at the time?
Probably a million. at least at that point.
It's that, but I'm saying that's basically that number right there. That 40,305. That consists of two boroughs.
Hmm.
Each borough consists of 20,000 people at that time. So you tell me you take two towns or two boroughs, because there's 12 boroughs in Philly. A lot of people
Okay.
don't know this.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, you got northwest, south, east, northwest Philly, northeast Philly, southeast Philly, southwest Philly. Then you got Philadelphia. Then I think you got central Philly, and I forgot what the 12th borough is. But I know you got 12 boroughs.
Right.
So you tell me at that time each borough consists of anywhere from 20 to 10,000 people, men, women, and children, and the elderly, as well as the sickly. So you tell me you got 4 boroughs, give or take.
Yeah.
That's humanly impossible. That's humanly impossible.
But what is intriguing is that you have 40,000 arrests. There's only 2,300 colored people that are men.
Yeah. That doesn't make no
all these
sense.
people being arrested.
Yeah.
Exactly. See, you were right about the criminality, because that is almost, if I'm doing the math roughly, all right, I'm going to do the math roughly, that would be 37,060.
Yes.
Give or take.
37,060 that are white males.
Or 37, because it's 40 and that's 305. So 37,055.
Yeah. But yet they painted us as a criminal.
Like, as a criminals.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Now, from what I mean, I've been to Philly. I've been to all the boroughs of Philadelphia because I got relatives that live over there. And from as far as I can remember, majority of them were black. There were a lot of black businesses even during that time frame being built. And whites couldn't work at the white business establishments because there were not enough of them over there. So they had no choice to work at the black business establishments.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm scratching my head. They couldn't be the majority of Philadelphia. You might have 1 or 2 boroughs that might have majority of them that were German.
Yeah.
Or Irish. Or Danish. Or French, give or take. But that's about it. So, I mean, oh my goodness. And he made these numbers up. This guy was like, I try to tell people, you got to pay attention to pseudo-racialist scientific racism con artists like Hoffman and Walter Ashley Peckler and Derek, Dr. Derek, I forgot his name. I had it on my book that I just finished reading. But he's one of them, as well as Charles Darwin's cousin, all of them.
Man, I can't stand Charles Darwin or his cousin.
Yeah, like
cousin pioneered the field of sociology.
Yeah, which is pseudoscience.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, you know, you have what's my man's name? Melville Herskovich and
yes.
France Boas.
Yes, that's the French racialist.
Yeah.
All of them.
One was actually a service member for the Nazis.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, and they let them live here comfortably.
Oh, yeah.
I keep telling people this tell you about white America.
Taught at Chicago, University of Chicago.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Had a red statue named after him.
Mm-hmm. Actually end up coming up with the Melville Herskovich out of the Africa theory.
Yeah.
And the cattle complex.
Oh my God.
So we're looking at New Jersey Penitentiary. And 1890, 877, 143 colored. And what he's trying to do is show a correlation of increase of the percentage of colored criminality over the years. So he'll get a small sample size.
Yeah, and they're over exaggerated. That's how
Yeah,
they name the numbers.
yeah. And then he'll go for a section or two, sometimes even 5 to 7 page, trying to compare and contrast criminality of the small sample size. See, look, it's increasing.
It's
He does this
increasing
all
like,
the time.
yeah, and it's not even a real time. First of all, these numbers are fake. It's not even real numbers of that time frame because even the best statistical analysis will look at like, wait a minute, I'm looking at the actual historical archives here versus what he wrote on his book at that exact same time frame. It doesn't add up. And I think why he had a disdain from the Negro is the fact that you gotta remember he's what you would call it, he's German, he's undersized, he's basically suffered from malnutrition all his life.
Yep.
He can't do physical manual labor
Mm-mm.
to save his hide, because that's where the money was. You know, that was where all the money was. If you didn't have physical skill training or physical skill mastery, you was not going to earn no money. So he didn't want to do the labor, but he saw that the landslide majority of the labor force were elderly men or people of color, pretty much. Color folk have more of a large scale of ownership of the labor force. Your earlier unions were formed by, i.e., elderly folk. That's right. 5'7", 110 pounds, soaking wet.
So,
This guy had a degenerated dental problems. Like his teeth were so rotten and deteriorated from lack of nutrition.
oh yeah, and it didn't help that his father also died of consumption, which he was drunk. That's all
Yeah,
consumption means.
yeah,
Interesting individual. Couldn't actually make it into the military because he couldn't actually pass the required physical test. He was that
right.
weak.
Matter of
And
fact, when I read up on the biography of him, they took an appearance of him. They didn't even bother to draw blood at him. They're like, oh my god.
no, he's too little.
They're like, you too little. That's the first thing they did. They're like, either we draw blood from you. It's kind of like you ever saw Captain America, the First Avenger,
Yeah.
where Steve Rogers went to each branch of the U.S. military multiple times, and like they just kept an eye on him. Like, look, dude, you suffer from polio. We can't take you. This is before they came out with the polio vaccine. That like they expect him to die any damn day. Oh my goodness. That's that's what he looked like.
And there you go. That's the image of him on the far right. Now, of course, the image in the middle isn't him.
No.
Okay. But at the end of the day, that is basically his body morphology. That's
Yeah.
110 pounds and 5 feet 6.5 inches. That's what you're
Yeah.
looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So get a compare and contrast of what he looked like. That's it.
Yeah. Not to mention, meat was a delicacy in Germany, so not
Yeah.
every German get to eat meat. They did not have a high concentration of consumption of protein because like not everybody want to be a farmer. So to farm, you gotta learn to practice harvesting livestock. Well, the reason why he had the stand of elderly men at that time because elderly males were bigger. We had access to livestock. We had access to farming. That's a skill set that's still instilled with us to this very day, which a lot of people don't know. So when you see an immigrant coming here at that time frame and they seem big, like to think about it, okay, you saw okay, granted big white Americans, but in comparison, a lot of them were not farmers, like you see on TV and TV Land channel and Nickelodeon. Like no, like you didn't see that. White farmers like Little House on the Prairie. They vast majority of them were underweight. for their size. They were like barely 5'7", standing with shoes on.
Right.
And these are like, the Norwegians, the Germans, the Irish, the Swedish, the Russians, the Bohemians, the Polanders, or known as Poland,
Mm-hmm.
the Italians. They were very small, very small. Hell, believe it or not, even the Chinese have a higher concentrated carbohydrates and protein concentration, because of large land mass, and they able to start off a irrigated agricultural society for tens of thousands of years, had a leg up on the Europeans at that time frame.
Yeah.
So they couldn't compete, and when it came to size development.
So we're looking at chapter 5, and that will be race traits. You'll see right there on the screen. So race traits and the tendencies of the American Negro. All right. So we're looking at percentage of arrests according to nationality and proportion
Mm-hmm.
of each nationality. So you have Irish, 6.4% total population. Percentage of total arrests, 10.3%.
Mm-hmm.
Germans, and I believe that number might be higher. Germans, 14.6%, 11.1% of the total arrests.
Mm-hmm.
Norwegians, you didn't have that many Norwegians
No.
specifically. Russians, 2.5, 3.9.
Yeah,
Okay.
you didn't start seeing Russians until like in the early 1920s. I mean the 1900s. At that point, they wasn't really coming in here left or right until 1900 to the 1920s.
And then here we have the hijack.
Yeah.
Negro population, 1.3% of total population, 9.8% of total arrests. Now, this is a mathematical inefficient number
Number, yeah.
because if
It's
you
not even
have,
a comparable number. You can't use that number as a comparison. I don't know why they use Italians as a comparable number, let alone the Polish, let alone the Bohemians or Russians, let alone the Swedes.
yeah, if there's such a small, infinitesimally insignificant percentage of the population, but 1.3%. Now, we've seen the so-called black population always teeter around that 10 to 13.5, 13.8%
That would
mark.
make us extinct, because you gotta understand how populations they grow. They don't stay stagnant. If the population stays stagnant, it's a dying population.
Right. So if we're using that number and
Correct.
we're at just 1.3% of the total population, you're not going to have that huge of a population boom in, what is this, in 1890 to
Yeah,
1990. So 1990 we rise up almost 16 14%.
that's still slow.
14%. Makes no sense.
Yeah, it's still slow. That's why I try to tell people. I tell people follow the money. And what do you mean about that? Well, okay. Out of all those ethnic groups here, and you even go on to the 20th century, and you want to use today's the 21st century, fine. The Negro net worth right now is at 29 plus $1 trillion, and 97% of it is controlled and owned by the males.
Right.
You don't do that with 13 to 16% of the population. That's humanly impossible. That's not how money works. Money grows when the population grows. It does not conform into a small contracted population. So that tells me that, okay, if the Negro wealth kept growing throughout the history of Jim Crow, throughout civil rights, post civil rights, on to the present day, that means their population is not stagnated. Their population is still growing.
I concur.
Based on the money. Based on the money, because the white population net worth at one point was $550 billion. and never went past that. And never went past that throughout the 20th century, not even one time. It never even hit $1 trillion. We were already at $1 trillion in the 1950s. Think about it. We were already at $2.4 trillion in 1950. And 50% of it was owned by the man, the other 50% was owned by the female. Now
that might connect to land.
Land ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Land ownership.
And then businesses, because you had segregated businesses back then.
Yep. Private industry, schools.
Mm-hmm.
So when they say, well, you got a lot of black people in poverty, I like, in a way, yes, but you're only focusing on 7, maybe 8% of that portion of that population. So my numbers shows that, like, a bare minimum, the so-called black people in the United States are technically 70% of the population overall, and winds about, give or take, 30 to 35%. If you look at the just the financial numbers alone.
Yeah.
I use the 13% population in any other country in the world, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter land mass or not. Like, wait a minute, the numbers don't add up. It's construed out like, wait a minute. It's showing that we've grown our net wealth. That's not the problem. The problem is our population size. Like, it can't be concentrated in a small human population, because that's not how money grows. Money grows when the population grows.
And what's interesting that he says is, of the various nationalities enumerated in this table, the Irish and Italian show a percentage of arrests decidedly above the average, you think. Yet, when compared...
Oh, my God! Compared to the color element, that's bullshit.
Yeah, we already know he's capping. We're going to give him a big cap. In southern cities, the excess...
Now, hold on a second. The Irish and Italian was not considered white at that time frame.
No, they weren't.
They were considered genetically inferior, especially basically by the Anglo-Saxon Germans.
Yeah. So they were kind of lumped in.
Yeah.
Not quite white, not quite black.
No, they're like, you just you're not pure.
That's here.
Basically what they said.
You're just here.
Mm-hmm.
In southern cities, the excess of Negro criminality is less marked on account of larger proportions of the color element living in the cities. I leave the method employed in previous tables unchanged, although a different method of comparison would bring out more clearly the disproportion of crime to population among the colored in the city and southern states. Louisville, Kentucky covers the 5 years, 1890 to 1894. So we're looking at Louisville.
Okay, Louisville, Kentucky.
What do you see from this chart?
Wait a minute, which one on the left, right?
Yeah.
All right, now the year 1890. Okay, 1892. Let's see. Hold on. Okay, hold on. This shit don't make no sense. Sorry, I can't hear me cuss, but wait a minute. This doesn't constitute no sense. What the hell on? This is like a bad accounting job. Do not become an accountant if you go if you go make fixed books. Dude, I recommend you not to be an accountant.
Yeah, these numbers look off.
These numbers are way off. And I'm not the best at math. I'm being honest with you. I can tell you right now, these numbers are purely off. They're not even typo.
I will have to go to the Library Archive and Records for the state of Kentucky. I used to work there. Shouts out to the Library Archive and Records.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to look up these numbers to compare and contrast. So I'm going to do a timestamp.
Yeah.
All right. And I will go back and look up these numbers to see if this is exact. And I will give you guys a update on this information, going directly back, pulling it from the records, looking up the census enumerated records of this year and span. And then I would tell you exactly how full of it, or well, I know he's full of it, but I'm not going to just give my opinion. I will go and do the legwork, drive down there, pull the information for you guys, and we'll do the due diligence. Because I think he's capping.
Yeah.
I believe he's capping. I know he's capping, but I need the proof.
Yeah, this doesn't make no sense. I'm like, wait a minute, what the hell is he talking about? He's over exaggerating a tiny weeny sample size, more likely for those people that did got arrested that were colored. Now, people don't know the definition of color because anybody could be relatable to color.
Native American, so-called
Asian,
Hispanic,
Negro, and there's multiple different shades of Negro as well as Hispanic.
mulatto.
And like mulatto, including Asians. There's you got South Asians with different variants of skin pigment. So we're like
white, specifically Italian and Irish, like we discussed a second ago.
Yeah. And at that time, they were not even considered white. They were actually just considered Italian and Irish. They were not considered pure, even among academics.
Now, we discussed Carolina and who set up Carolina originally with the aristocracy of Europe.
Yep.
Now, you have with this, can you see this? This is...
I can see it, the coat of arms, right?
Yeah. So if you're looking, let me zoom in. Okay. Boom.
You right there.
Black figurehead.
Yep.
And let me see if I find the other one. No, I think this is the only one on this page. But you have numerous pages where you have black figureheads that are coat of arms of different European families, some of which help set up the Carolinas. Let's go through this book. I'm not just going to cap like he is and not show you guys the information. He's super cap.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, some of these coat of arms might still be ebony.
Yeah, absolutely.
They won't show exactly.
There's another one right there.
Right there. Yep.
Okay. So some of these families contributed towards Carolinas, towards New York.
You know how the Carolinas were formed, right?
Yes, I do. But please expand. Tell the audience.
All right. There was no such thing as North and South Carolina. It only formulated during the Confederacy because the North wanted, the Confederate legislator wanted to create a separate statehood and expand the Confederacy because they figured a lot of Democrats at the time rebelled against slavery. Well, not just slavery. Like a lot of people don't know that the Civil War was not to end slavery. That's the biggest job of all time. Abraham Lincoln wants to continue slavery. That's another thing a lot of people don't tell you, that Abraham Lincoln was a racist. Mm-hmm. He was losing, and he narrowly won his election. He's going to be a one-term president, even if he never got shot. He was going to be a one-term president because he was a failure president. I tell people, go ahead and look up the archives of his diaries that he said public and privately about the Negro and about all the ethnic groups of slavery and about the white slavery. He was willing to continue to expand it because the North need money. They were doing a northern expansion onto the South.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because what the South did was they seceded. They created a treason and assertion. So they basically they basically committed high. There's no such thing as high treason. They basically committed treason. Okay, so all the 13 colonies were technically related to the northern colonies. It's like Virginia. There was no such thing as Virginia, West Virginia. It was only called Virginia State.
Yep.
And then West Virginia, just like North Carolina, was an expansion for the Confederacy, because Virginia State did not approve of slavery nor the Confederacy. Same thing of South Carolina before it became South Carolina. So that's matter of fact, you learned that about the Dakotas too in the Midwest, but that was like after the Confederacy mumbo jumbo was, settled after the Civil War. But that's what it came down to in a nutshell. And after the Civil War, if you ever hear the term called the Oregon Trail, these were all these people that went to the West and Southwest were white slaves. Okay, white slaves that basically refugeed out of the Confederacy. They were doing that during the Civil War. A lot of people don't know this. So they basically fled, and that actually added more insult to injury when it comes to the Oregon Trail. Like a lot of people don't know, when you look up the Oregon Trail history, these people did not have no form of trade skills or anything. They wanted to get rich overnight because they were in slave bondage. Yep. Chattel slave bondage. This was not indentured servant. People don't know that the legal term indentured servant means you're a prisoner of war. Now, a foreigner cannot become a prisoner of war in this country. You have to be a native or indigenously native inhabitant to become a prisoner of war. So blacks was considered indentured servant too, so that makes blacks a indentured servant. Mm-hmm. Hence, you are a prisoner of war to this very day. You're under a military occupation. So when these people fled, they are in 1867, they created the Board of Education, and they made it federal mandated that all schools must be public because they want to document children. And these children will be the future of industrialization complexes like the industrial prison complex, the industrial educational complex, the industrial worker slavery complex, which later gave birth to the 40-hour work week. Before that, people did not have to work 40 hours to achieve a decent wage or decent livable wage. They could work 20 hours a week or 25 hours a week and do just fine. So the 40-hour work week was basically based on a slavery contract. And they created salaries for the first time because people were getting paid by wage, not salary.
Yep.
And that's all because a lot of white slaves fled during and after the Civil War. That's where you saw the Oregon Trail. You saw a huge white population dip in the South. Like it was like happened overnight. Like I said, half their population died. The ones that remained alive either stayed or they fled.
And they were also given free land allotments out in the West.
Right, the $5 Indian came about.
Yeah.
In the year 1886.
And there were also you had some that actually start leaving in the 40s, 1840s, and you had the expansion due to the fact that you had different articles written about gold. So that's why you get that the 49ers with San Francisco. So a lot of people got rich overnight and they didn't have a lot of skills, and they figure I can just go pan for gold.
That's where the term panhandling came from. Mm-hmm. So they panned for gold and it worked. Now these territories out west were part of the peace treaty. But you got to remember, after the Civil War, the year 1871, the Union States became a corporation. It was no longer the Union States of America. It became United States of America.
Yeah.
And now the government was reestablished again because there was a government expansion. San Francisco, um, based on Francis San Francisco, or the Franciscan missions,
Yep.
these were buffer zones by the Mexican government, and what you would call it, the West in California were hijacked by white foreigners that are originally from the South. Because you got to remember, once you step away from the South, going Southwest, you're not in U.S. territory no more. You're in foreign land. You're in indigenous occupied lands. So, and the Spaniards, they took over, so they hijacked them. So these indigenous lands became hijacked by the U.S. government and the Mexico government simultaneously.
And what I always find intriguing about Oregon was that until 1940, no so-called black people or persons were allowed there. Now, you did have indigenous
They did not allowed to own. Yeah, they did not allow to own homes either.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to be a homeowner if you were black or non-white. You're not allowed to be a homeowner
in Oregon.
Yep.
Interesting place.
And believe that's the concentration of progressives live.
Yeah. Irony. Yeah. Well, not really irony because they're not really too progressive.
No, there's you bet what Dr. King said about the progressives.
Yeah.
He said that back in 1964, and I think it was either ABC or CBS. It was broadcast worldwide. He said, like, to make a long story short, the white progressives was a disappointment all this time. He wasted his time putting faith into the white progressives.
Well, Malcolm X said something completely different, but similar to about liberals.
Yeah.
He said something very prophetic about liberals.
And that was back in 1956.
Yeah.
1956. That was like almost a decade before Dr. King said what he said. And that's one thing that Malcolm X did try to warn Dr. King about. That, like, hey, the white liberal is more of your enemy than the judicial Black Caucus. At the time, we did have a legit Black Caucus versus today's Black Caucus. Black Caucus is a joke today. We don't have no Black. Yeah, I mean, we have a corporate Black Caucus, and then you got these so-called white people try to represent the Black Caucus. Said they have Black ancestry. Come find out they don't.
I mean, that's with NAACP. You have a majority of the founders, minus
Jewish.
And what was the lady's name? It's on the tip of my tongue. It's not Wheatley. It's
I know you told the one that pretended to be a black girl.
Yeah, she actually the two of them founded the NAACP. Well,
okay. Oh yeah.
What is her name? I hate when that happens. I can't.
Yeah, it's a white Jewish organization. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, it's nothing. But I digress.
Yep.
So
in
Charleston, homicide, rape, assault, wife beating. All right. So it's pretty even with wife beating.
Oh my God.
I guess they had some unruly wives back then. This is not funny. I don't advocate you beating the hell out of your wife.
Mm-hmm. Now, around that time, that's when the feminist movement started in Western Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1890 up to the present day. It's actually won Western Europe.
I mean, you had the suffragettes here in the United States.
And but that got shut down.
Yeah. I mean, they did exist during the 1700s, and you had a woman that not quite affiliated with the suffrage movement, but kind of was, and she actually won the first House Rep office in 1814. Shouts out to the straight shooter that dropped that info to me, but and that was in Wyoming. Wow. But yeah, they've been around, but they show the same. They show the same characteristics. The one characteristic they show is that they're always married.
Yeah.
And they always have a husband for life.
Right.
and he's usually very wealthy.
Yep. You know what that means.
And they write books.
Right. That comes down to the fact that she's not feminist.
Right.
That's basically what it is. She did not have. How could a wealthy woman that's eternally married for life go through the same struggles as a struggling wife going through, or a single mother going through? How's that relatable? That's like saying I could relate to poor people, and I've never been poor a day in my life. And I live in a lavish luxury. I have tens of thousands of high-end exotic sports cars. I have 40 mansions and own 13 businesses. And I said, I know what it's like to be poor. Okay.
See, you do understand, because you could have 41 mansions. You were being oppressed. That's how they rationalize it.
Yeah.
So,
exaggeration.
This guy, he keeps capping. And if you would have saw the previous chapters, I had to literally just cut all the stuff out that he was just capping. He was talking about.
I tried to read this book for many years, and like I can't really read it because it's like it doesn't make no sense. and here's the problem about whites: they claim that they're very logical, right? and the vast majority of these are white males, because I know that the people that attain these are white males versus white females. Because I had an argument with a white female racist about this guy like 17 years ago. And like, go back and read his goofy ass book. He just over exaggerates numbers. Like, the numbers are on a small sample size, where the legitimate numbers of homicidal and poverty rates and industrial bad behavior debacles come from your people. And then she went back and she's like, you know what? You're right. I didn't see it that way the first time. No, because you guys were conditioned through mental template programming and propaganda. These were the earlier propagandas. It was not because of Birth of a Nation, the first film that depicted, black males in a negative light. It was these books that did the job before that movie even came about in the year 1915.
Damn. Now that is a point that no one's ever made. And it's very cogent and highly, highly. I'm going to have to actually. Do you mind if I quote you on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
That's a great. I'm going to write that down on my little whiteboard right here.
Not to mention, you got to realize that these books that guys like Hoffman and Walter Ashley Pegler and Charles Darwin, his cousin, they were taught in private schools and Ivy League universities. There's a reason why they didn't want young black adults and black children to go to these schools, because they have freedom to say what the hell they want to say. These schools were designed to promote negative propaganda. But yet your color ebony female went to these schools, and she was taught by this crap.
Okay, I had to write that down. I'm dead honest. I literally wrote that down on my whiteboard.
Thank you.
That is a new quote. Now I'm gonna put that in the next video at the end. That's a quote. So some references have been made to rape in the preceding tables. It was shown.
Keywords, some references. They don't.
There
use
we go.
all.
Some. Yeah.
That's the words. Like, people gotta realize that you gotta understand keywords, because whoever bookmarked it, they put a little check to show that this guy's full of shit. Some references has been made to rape in the preceding tables. It was shown that was the 567 colored persons in the United States. They don't specify the gender or sex of the individuals.
Exactly.
In prisons waiting trial for this crime. Now, last time I checked on that said case, there were 0 rapes were caused by colored males. Because, like I said, color could be anybody.
Yep. And as we go on, the lynching of colored men is usually for rape. well, that's usually the justification by the Klan and sheriffs and men of the time that were so-called white, but occasionally for murder. No, it was usually for rape. It wasn't usually for murder, robbery.
Yeah,
Because we looked at the his chart on murder, and we were like 5%.
yeah.
Miscegenation, etc. The evidence on this point is not as it's not as would whoa is not such as would recommend itself. See, that's okay.
That's a contradicting right there.
Investigation to this kind in which official data are main reliance. See,
You start seeing holes in the story.
I've been able to collect information on 129 attempts at lynchings, of which 83 were successful. Okay, so you're keeping information on lynchings. All
On
right.
lynching, okay,
Yeah.
fine. But you know why 83 out of 129 attempts were successful?
No. Explain.
No. Well, let's see. 83 was successful because these lynches were kidnappings. So you got to remember what I said earlier about Europeans that were imported here were criminals first. These were murders, rapists. They
Yep.
were practiced this in Europe. So direct correlation of the behaviors in Europe migrated to here will practice the exact same direct correlation behaviors that they practiced in their ancestral homes. But yet, why is why is the black person going to prison for not committing those crimes? But white person don't. So of the 129 persons, right, that's charged,
Yep.
102 were colored and 27 were white.
Yeah.
Really? But what about these lynchings?
Seems very
successful. What they telling you that they exempt those as crimes because they view the black male as a human animal, as a
right.
savage, as non-human.
And they will only try white men for hangings if it was usually for murder or something along that line.
Lynching is a murder.
Yes.
Which that doesn't make no sense for this person to say that.
Again, this guy is a big capper, and he said in 4 cases the mob was successful.
4
mob
cases?
rules.
Okay, think about it. 129 attempts and 83 were successful. No, that's majority of those attempts were very successful.
Yeah. So he's underreporting that also. So he has a lynching chart, and that's a very morbid thing to be looking at.
Yeah.
But we'll skim through it real quickly. And of course, you had lynchings in northern states.
Wait a minute. In northern states, there were 12 attempts, 3 successful. You know why that number was so small? Because you got your brains blown out at that time frame. If once we'll pull that shit off over here. Now, for all we know, they don't specify colored people in these states. So they could have been lynching other ethnic Europeans.
Yeah.
Which that actually happened up north.
Yep.
More so than to the blacks up north.
Now you had several riots in Boston.
Yeah.
And
they were gang related.
Yes. In New York, you had different riots. Some occurred right during the point of the Civil War because some people didn't want to be drafted to go down and fight. Same thing happened in the Revolutionary War.
Correct.
Some happened due to industrialization, different jobs, and different unionization. So
because they couldn't afford to lose all that because guess what? You know, you might not come back home. And how your family gonna survive? Because you gotta remember, you know, you only got a pension when you're alive. When you're dead, you know, the family ain't got paid for your pension.
Yeah. So it's just he's capping yet again. But here's something that is interesting because you have so-called the space SYSBM space, and you have the red pill space. And one thing that's always discussed is this right here, illegitimacy, because he
Oh
talked
my
about
God.
this in chapter 4 and
I can
in
tell you that he's full of shit when it comes to illegitimacy.
look at the numbers.
Yeah, the illegitimacy among whites were higher than blacks. He took this number and swapped it for that. Now you gotta remember, illegitimacy birth rate among whites were higher than blacks.
Oh yeah,
Blacks
especially.
actually have to produce families because of farmland and construction.
And there wasn't a large percentage of black people living in big cities at that time. They were living in these closed communities,
These
specifically southern.
southern communities, rural
Yeah.
areas, and if they lived in the Midwest, same thing. They actually formulate the early suburbias were formulate among blacks before the suburbia boom in the 1940s from whites.
Yeah. So you're looking at 17.6 versus 2.32, big cap, 1879. Yeah,
So you talk
even
about 15 years.
yeah,
Talk about 15-year stretch.
even bigger cap, 1894, 2.56, 26.43. That's a huge cap at 1894. And I guess if he would have done the statistics in 1933, he would have put 2.56 and 40.46 for black people.
Yeah. Which in 1933, blacks'
Yeah.
illegitimacy rate was like 2%, if that.
Yes.
If
And
that.
you had the Depression, which broke up many white families. Plus, you had we discussed this years ago, the 7-year balloon payment for mortgages that pushed many white people out of their houses
Correct.
because they couldn't afford that mortgage payment. There was
They've been evicted. They've been
evicted
evicted.
predations
And
laws.
and blacks came in and bought the land for pennies on the dollar outright.
So we agree that this is a big cap with the
Yeah.
illegitimate births.
Yeah.
Okay. That's super cap. Super cap. So he goes on to illegitimate race. He goes to Delaware. He
Oh my
goes
goodness.
to DC. So let's go by that because he's just capping super. Oh, illegitimacy in Jamaica. All right.
Oh my God.
This is your people.
Wait a minute. He never been to Jamaica. Has he? Not to my knowledge.
No, he just grabbed statistics from the Caribbeans because in the previous chapters, he grabbed statistics from a couple West Indian countries from their Office of Records and Statistics, often capped, often dudes that were capping down there.
Thank you.
So let's look what he said with illegitimacy in Jamaica. All right.
I'll be right back. Give me something to drink real quick. Go ahead.
All right. So you're at 57.7%. That's a cap in 1880. All right. I'm going to have to actually go pull the records up for Jamaica in this point, but I think he's capping. All right. Signing marriage register with a mark. Okay. I get that because a lot of people weren't really literate at that time. So they do the X mark on marriage certificates. But hold up. Jamaicans are mostly Christian. So they were actually getting marriage not through license, but actually through the church and witnesses. All right. So let's see. 57%. Let's see where it's at in 1894. Wow, 60%. So it had 3% bump. Yeah, that's full of it. I don't agree with that. Let's see what he talks about. So it says chapel. Okay, about 25 years after James Anthony Froude wrote of the Negro in the West Indies and following severe terms. So who is this James Anthony Froude? We'll come back to him. Ah, okay. Morals, in the technical sense, they have none, but they cannot be said to sin because they have no knowledge of the law and therefore cannot commit a breach of law. They are naked and not ashamed. See, that's more of the whole savage. So when you see things like savage, okay, that connects to the concept, savage fenty, connects to the concept of savage, not knowing, uh, being incapable of morals, moral decency, things. And then let's blow up Savage Fenty right there. Yes, there we go. A woman indigenous to that region, Savage Fenty. All right. So, what he was discussing, they are married, as they call it, but not parsoned. The woman prefers a looser tie, then she may be able to leave the man if he treat her unkindly. A missionary told me that the marriage connection rarely turned out well, which begins with legal marriage. What do they consider to be legal? Okay, marriage is supposed to be something held between a person and their religious God. The system is strange, but it answers there is evil, but there is not the demoralizing effect of evil. They sin, but their sin is only as animal sin. So the Jamaicans were animals, according to him. And this is the person that's actually stating it right there. Let me blow the image up. Okay, that's him. That's the dude capping. Super cap. James Anthony Froude. You guys see him? To the right. So, without shame, because there's no sense of wrongdoing. They eat the forbidden fruit, but it basically means that they cheat, hook up, breach marriage, things of that nature. You have to read through the lines, but it brings with them no knowledge of the difference between good or evil. In fact, these poor children of darkness have escaped the consequences of the fall and must come of another stock after all. Oh, that
All right, I'm
rhymes.
back. I'm back. All right, what did I
Okay.
miss?
Oh no, we're still on the illegitimacy,
Okay.
and illiteracy in Jamaica. So
Oh wow. Let me get on with the subject now. I've been to on the Caribbean, the Caribbean,
yeah,
and obviously that's my father's culture. Hence, that's my culture.
right.
Let me tell you something about the West Indies in general. They value education more than any fucking thing. Sorry you have to hear me say that term. They value education as much as they value life itself.
Right.
Because that's how you get out of poverty. In Jamaica, it ain't like the United States. United States is the first world nation. I mean, you could become rich or wealthy overnight with little to no education. Not like that in Jamaica. So in Jamaica, you really have to. Oh, James Anthony. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so the so-called illiteracy rate is very. I'm not saying it does exist. It does exist, but it's not how you see on this chart. I mean, it's really a pseudo over exaggeration of the literacy rate over there.
No, he's talking illegitimate births.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
Yeah,
illegitimate births.
I'm gonna blow it up a little bit more because it's hard to
Oh,
read.
okay, hold on a second.
Boom,
Oh,
illegitimates.
oh no,
And
they value
he said
what you
so.
call they value
Basic
marriage more than anything, just like education.
illegitimacy and illiteracy. So basically, with the illiteracy, and we'll go back down. So the X mark was a mark actually made by the indigenous people.
Yes,
And it also was made by different Europeans
right.
through different European eras that
Yes.
many people would make an X mark when they would sign different documents and things of that nature. That's why I say X marks the spot,
Spots. Yep.
or exchequer. Exchequer was actually a system where a person would be designated almost like you go to a bank, and in
Right.
the bank you have a person that's a notary of public. So you had something similar at that time as an exchequer that would actually validate whether this person, let's just say Samson Moore,
Right.
signed this document. And are you Samson Moore? Yes, I'm Samson Moore. We'll make your
Mhm.
mark on the sheet and let's get married. Boom. There's your official witness.
Right.
So, for the most part, they tried to say that, and you were right, that most Jamaicans were illiterate, which I say is super fucking cap,
Mhm.
and that contributed to them being um, a low moral standard, low moral capacity, and having illegitimate births. Basically, one connects to the other. You
Right.
can't fucking read. You don't really value education, thus and
But
so.
here's the crazy part. But you got a lot of illegitimate births where people would still attend to school,
Yeah.
teen pregnancy. So that do that correlate with that logic? No, because
According to him, it does. According to him, it does. Because he's full of it.
yeah.
As we continue on with this, after 50 years of educational and religious influence under conditions of freedom, 60 out of every 100 births are acknowledged to be illegitimate. Okay. All right. One of the most recent reports on the condition of the Negro in Jamaica was published in the New York Evening Post. All right. Is that the precursor to the New York Post?
Yeah.
Because I've never heard of the Evening Post.
Yeah,
But
I think
okay.
that's the precursor.
All right. So I'm reading through this, and all right, because you did have Jamaican immigrants that came to New York,
Hmm.
but much of oh, what's the man's name? He actually he was possibly a Mason, and he actually a Pan Africanist, Garvey from Jamaica.
Garvey, yeah, Garvey. No, he's not a Mason. I know that, but I know he sponsored the Ku Klux Klan, and he wanted to create this Pan African crap. His goal was to go to every country around the world that had dark skinned people and create a so called unified black nation, as they call
Yeah,
it, which that was false. And if you look deep into it, it don't take that much. What you would call it? A conscious one did this YouTuber that I used to subscribe to. Dane Calloway was another one that exposed Marcus Garvey.
yeah,
I keep telling people Marcus Garvey is not your Jamaican hero. It's actually he's the polar opposite. He was an embarrassment. He said, but he's worried about his people. Well, his people will be residing in Jamaica, not in the United States.
yeah.
And Booker T. Washington and the late great Frederick Douglass called them out on it. They're like, "What the hell are you doing? How dare you talk to the Klan members and pay them money to have us migrate out of our own birth home, where we had history here, we had heritage here."
He was a trip.
Yeah.
We're going on to the next page because there's nothing on this one,
No.
and we're looking at the top of races only after a struggle against adverse conditions, which would have reduced a race less sturdy to barbarism and savagery. All right.
Oh.
That's an interesting term right there.
Yeah.
No system of state socialism would benefit a race. All right. As it may occasionally prove to benefit the individual. See, this is the individual over the collective mindset.
Collective mindset. But
State
he used,
socialism.
yes, but he uses that um was he 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 contradicts himself on that
Mm-hmm.
because he used collectivism as his standpoint And like, well, the situations that he's talking about when it comes to colored people are a far in between and isolated incidents, whereas among the whites, he don't want to point out that there's a collectivism among that behavior in that culture.
Mm-hmm.
You figure you're in Germany, you saw that be firsthand.
Oh yeah, yeah. With Germany, Bismarck established one of the first health systems and also retirement systems, which is socialism.
Listen, yes,
So I don't get why he has
you know,
such an angst against. All right, this guy, he's super capping as per
yeah,
the usual, and that was what 1840s when
yes.
Bismarck established that.
Mm-hmm.
The violation of fundamental principles of economics on the part of the state or association of individuals or individuals work alone for the amelioration of the condition of the lower classes must in end produce a very effects and tendencies to show to be in operation amongst the colored population, namely the increased mortality, decreasing vitality, increasing immorality, criminality, and pauperism. Mr. Francis A. Walker may be the effects of foolish law. The legislator of the philanthropist and social reformer, I would add, may think it's hard that his power for good is so closely restricted. But, all right, let's see what he's going to say. But he has no reason to complain of any limits upon his power for evil. On the contrary, it would seem that there is no race of men whom a few laws respecting industry, trade, and finance passed in defiance of economic principles could not in half a generation transform into beast.
Wow. What does that tell you?
Says a lot.
Yeah.
Let's go over to the chart. White and colored paupers in almhouses in 1890 per million. What is an almhouse? Let me look that up.
Yeah, like that. I never heard that term.
Rather than speculate and say, hey, I know what it is, and pretend like I know what I'm talking about.
No.
A house built originally by a charitable person or organization for poor. Okay, all right, all right, all
Okay.
right, all right.
All right.
All right, I didn't know what that is. So,
All right.
whites, colored. Virginia, Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Kentucky. That is cap.
What? Kentucky, oh my God! Like
that is cap.
We just talked about on East Side Kentucky last night. Like, yo, people don't realize how badly impoverished East Side Kentucky been for 213 years and counting.
That is super cap.
Yeah. Oh my God! Like, don't even get started with Alabama. Is another one in Mississippi, Louisiana.
And here's your state,
Yeah,
New York. That might be.
No,
I don't know.
It should be higher than that. It should
you
be
think
higher
so?
than that. Yeah, because New York, Manhattan.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, because it's 1890.
1890.
It should be higher.
It should be higher because you got to remember, they start formulating prisons left and right. That's when the industrial prison complex really spawned.
And I have a problem with this one too. And I'm going to go and do some
Michigan?
research.
Oh my goodness.
I will head to the Michigan Library Archive and Records, and I will check that timestamp. Mm-hmm. I will check that to see if he's actually being accurate. I don't believe he is, but fuck it. It's just Lansing. It's a 90-mile drive away, and I'll go check. Fuck it. But I think he's capping.
Well, this whole book is a big cap.
What do you say?
I said this whole book that he made is a big cap.
You're pretty accurate. You're pretty accurate.
Yeah, the whole entire book was a cap. I think that's why I only read half of the book and just closed it. Like, okay, this guy's full of shit.
Yeah, he's capping on this page, capping on that page. Let's see, is he going to cap on this page too? Okay, Cincinnati. All right, Cincinnati, as we all know, right next to Cincinnati is we talked about this 2017.
Yeah.
Xenia, Ohio
Yes.
was a place which they would take their mistresses, so-called black women that were in bondage in slavery. So they would
Oh,
take
the
them up.
Mason Dixie line.
Yeah, they would take them to Xenia, Ohio, and they would
Hmm.
have these resorts. And they also had other towns in Ohio where they would take their mistresses and they would cavort and do what adults do.
Yes.
So
And
let's
in
see
layman terms, they have plenty of time to flee themselves, and they did.
exactly. Cincinnati, I can call up my friend and I'll
Mhm.
see if this is actually correct. And I can get that information immediately for you guys. But I don't believe he's being honest. DC, my hometown where I was born. Yeah, I'll just call my family member up and he'll give me that information, see if he's actually being accurate. I don't believe he is. This guy keeps on capping. So, proportions of pauper funerals and total number of deaths. Now, paupers were buried in those little pine boxes, and sometimes they were just cremated,
We made it. Yeah.
and they would have what $100 to $200 pine box back then. They just throw them in the ground.
Ground. Yeah, that's what they could afford. People were poor back then. Like, oh,
Okay. DC, let's see what they say. All right, white colored. I we'll let that one sit.
hmm.
So, does the Negro as an agricultural laborer produce as much as white man under the same condition? Okay.
Oh my God. Why would he say
Super
that?
fucking cat.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh, damn.
Yo, that's super cap.
Yeah. I like. Wait a minute. He produced more than. Let me tell
Oh,
you something. In my current employer, I outperform my work constituents in the exact same, if not worse conditions than they could keep up with me. My white male constituents cannot even keep up with me. Either they younger than me, or the same age as me, or older than me. I'm dancing circles around them at the age of 43.
right.
What does that tell you?
You
Now,
know what you're
see,
doing.
yeah, not to mention, back in the day around this time, well, actually in the 20th century, during Jim Crow, during the 20th century, you hear the term that, hey, you work as hard as a nigger.
Yeah.
Now, that was considered a compliment because they said, hey, Negro males work their asses off.
This guy, I swear. Um, you know
Wait
what?
a minute. White and color labor is enhanced by conflict of opinion, even among those most competent to judge of the Negro as an agricultural industrial. What the fuck is he talking about? I know of no subject said in General Armstrong on which you hear such diametrically opposite opinions as you do about the colored people. I have heard two men of the same time. Dude, you use a small sample sizes again.
Yeah, he does that a lot in this book.
He's a bias.
He will actually, for instance, when he was discussing things such as lung capacity, which
Oh my God.
I actually went to a medical book in the basement because I have a
Mm-hmm.
family member that's a doctor and
Mm-hmm.
we keep all of our books. I don't know why we do that, but it's an old medical book from 1984.
All right.
1984, when my uncle was in med school.
Right.
Okay. And they break down the lung charts for males, females. Of course, women have a smaller lung capacity.
That's an estrogen.
Okay. Right. And they actually discussed lung capacity and lung size. And they had these interesting charts due to the fact that you do not autopsies, but you do cadavers. And they would take
Yes.
cadavers and they would compare different charts for cadavers, weights. And there was no difference between the lung size of a so-called average adult white male from Europe and an average adult so-called black male from America.
Mhm.
So they weighed exactly the same. So I was like, oh, what is he talking about? And he would actually go through litigious, well, I technically can't say he's litigious because litigious documents of legal measurements from the U.S. Army Department,
Right.
which he was falsely inputting information, because I don't think he was putting the right information in, because as you went further in the chapter, you had army men that were talking about, yeah, black soldiers do a very good job. I would prefer them because they're robust, they're athletic, they hold their own, they're great at service. And then he'll put some fucked up chart about them having small lung capacity and tropical lungs, and they couldn't deal with Arctic conditions because their lungs are smaller and they are more susceptible to scafolia, which is tuberculosis, and
Which is
all sorts of
bullshit.
other different. I was like, okay, so he will have directly from the U.S. Army
Mhm.
numerous statements from generals, from surgeons, doctors, physicians, completely putting a positive look on so-called black soldiers. And
Mhm.
he would have chart after chart trying to disprove that these were actual facts. So this is what he does.
This guy is the ultimate cat man. Like, I can't believe white folks fell for this shit. Like, literally, and this not me being racist at all. I can't believe white males literally fell for this crap for centuries. I can't believe it.
Not only did they fall for it, they created entire industries around this, one of which is the healthcare industry, which actively discriminates against people based on statistics and data information that he falsely accrued during this point.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So now he goes into the Negro labor and the white labor. So he's
Oh
comparing and
my.
contrasting.
Oh my goodness.
So his experience with it.
There's no comparison.
Oh, this is interesting. A Massey, Mr. Massey of Friars Point, Mississippi, replies the Negro is the most docile and tractable of all laborers, and under proper management, the most content and profitable. The thriftless general ascribed to the Negro is more a fault of employer than of the laborer. Now, for you guys that may not understand, Massey actually connects back to Europe. And
Yep.
if I can go to the coat of arms, if I can find Massey, I will do it for you guys. I'll look for that and I'll put that image up at the end, because I'm gonna go through this book and find some other stuff that's going to interest me. I'm gonna get off subject. So let's get back. But Massey, you have black Masseys,
Right.
so-called ebony men, and I know one I went to school with, and he was named Massey, and that's a name from the eastern, well, the western part of Europe.
Yeah.
Very, very
The
prominent family.
Yep. Black nobility. The
So,
evil black nobility. They like to call them.
mhm. So he continues to go on, and the experience of the Virginia planter, Colonel Henry Stokes.
Okay, that
I,
sounds new. That he's from Prince Howard County.
yeah, I know Stokes. I've heard of Stokes before, but Prince Edward County showed that under the direction of a new head, 20,000 hills of tobacco on the hand were cultivated, in contrast with only 10,000 hills under slavery. Now, one thing he's not going to discuss is that you had mechanization that occurred also during this
Yeah,
point.
correct. That
And
sped things up.
Yeah. So, this guy just he's just attempting so much to try to prove his racialized opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know what? Let's see how many pages are left in this.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's really getting on my nerves at this point.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm trying to be open minded. Let's see. Okay. Because he keeps on capping. And I know he's going to, okay, let's go to the Negro as an industrial factor.
Oh my goodness.
Previous to emancipation, the race had little opportunity to become closely associated with industrial pursuits. Not true,
True.
because you had numerous black men working in shipyards,
Yes.
building your freight ships, your warships,
Your
building your
skyscrapers.
skyscrapers. So there were steel and
Your schools.
ironmen.
Yes.
The
Masons.
Yep, your brick masons, stone masons. They also
Stonemasons.
built your churches. They
Yes.
built your
Post office.
courthouses, post
Police
office. We
station.
discussed that. Oh yeah,
Precincts.
bridges,
Firehouses. Yep. Bridges.
bridges, roads.
Roads.
There were colored.
Railways. Oh
There were
my
colored.
goodness.
There were colored machinists, slave and free, out of plantations and towns. A considerable amount from agricultural labor was performed by them on their own account for the whites. Okay, but the labor was non-competitive since labor which had little to no
Bullshit.
relation to the struggle of life and developed the qualities which would make Negroes more fit for the struggle which was to come. All right,
What?
let's see he's capping. So representation,
Now, around that time, you had blacks building, like bricklayers, carpenters, painters,
right?
um, which we call barbers, bookmakers, dry goods, which we call tailors, butchers, um, fishermen, hotel keepers, gardeners, cigar makers, of course. That's another trademark we hold. Upholsterers, coach makers,
Mm-hmm.
coachmen,
Well, this is
printers.
something that's weird in South Carolina. House servants.
That's
Eh,
for women.
No, they said men. They
Oh,
said
men.
males. Slaves free. Why would there be a freeman that's a house servant?
No. Hell no.
That makes no sense. All right, let's go back. Hold up. There you go. There you go. So, 1888 were house servants. That's more of a woman's job.
Yeah.
Is he capping right there?
Yes, he is.
All right. I know about stevedores. Okay, I can.
Stevedores.
All right. Shoe keepers.
Yes.
So I guess that was a freeman's job. All right. So we all know about South Carolina. Remember, we talked about this. You talked about this. You had many black masters in South Carolina. Many black masters. And they wrote a good book about the black masters of South Carolina. So are some of these so-called slaves actually apprentices, or are they actually slaves? No one knows.
No.
Some of them were. Some of them
were.
But let's look at what year he's talking about. 1848. Charleston. Okay.
Charleston, South Carolina. I doubt that these were slaves. More likely, they were probably already masters.
Indentured servants,
Or
things of that nature.
Yeah, probably apprentice.
Some were from Europe, and they had their passage paid, and they worked as apprenticeships.
Yes.
Some were slaves. All right. The similar condition exists in other southern cities. In New Orleans, we are informed by Mr. Ingle, the Negroes were employed, I know, as carmen, carpenters, laborers, masons, planters, tailors, merchants, and shoemakers in Virginia. And I remember, Tito would talk about the not the octoroon, but what did he call it? The balls.
The
Uh,
optimal balls.
not octoroon, but it was some balls that they would have down there in Louisiana. I can't think of it at the time. It'll come back to me, and I'll be
Oh,
pissed.
placage. Yeah,
Gosh,
placage.
that is. There
Right,
you go.
placage. But
Gosh.
they were formed in optimum ball placage. I got a book that I ordered like a few years back called Wench.
Yeah. Oh, I
And
read that.
yeah, it's a people get mad at me. It's actually not it's a nonfiction book. It's a true story. It's a historic story. But now they label it as fiction because a lot of elderly women in the United States got mad. But it's actually written by I know her last name is Cabrera, so she's Afro Latina.
Okay.
I think she's Dominican, because Cabrera is usually a Dominican or Cuban name. Um, she wrote about her other part of her family ancestry and the Mason Dixie line that formulates the Bocage and Octagon balls, similar to what the Ivory Coast West African women did with the Danish,
Yeah.
the Dutch, and the other Northern European pirate males
Yeah.
when they came involved in contact with them. So I tell people, when you see a lot of West Africans that's light skinned with green eyes or blue eyes or hazel eyes for that matter, they were descendants of these arranged marriages. They were
Daughters of the
daughters of the
trade.
trade.
Yeah.
Like no, we naturally like no. That's a rarity over there. That what you saw in the West Africans is way too common. I mean, throughout the entire Ivory Coast. Okay.
Okay. So as pay or skilled labor was $3 per day, the lowest at $1.10. The average was $1.75. The highest wages paid unskilled laborers $1.50. The lowest
Mm-hmm.
60 cents. The average $1.10. As regards comparative efficiency of common and skilled labor as compared with white labor at the same work, 27 employers with 1,379 employers with 1,441 colored workers prefer white labor. Okay. So that's a cap right there,
Yeah,
specifically in your trades
yeah.
at that point because they weren't that good at the trades.
No,
But
they didn't. You know when they didn't got involved in the trades? They didn't start getting involved in the trades until after the Korean War.
right.
Until 1956, that's when whites started getting involved in the trades. It took them like a century to get involved in the trades. They were already 100 years behind. And matter
Yeah.
of fact, when you go to trade or vocational school, the majority males you see there are black or Hispanic. You do not see white males in a lot of these trade schools.
No, you don't.
No.
Let's blow this up. So let's slide. It has been shown, cut myself off. It has been shown preceding part of the work that education has failed to improve materially the condition of the race. See, man, I was talking about this earlier.
Yes.
We have here the testimony of those who have come in daily contact with Negro laborers to the
Right.
effect that education has failed to benefit the race in an economic sense. Surely, such emphatic opinions must have some substantial foundation in education, as it is as present carried on, proved to be the material value of the Negro. The men who make use of the class of labor would welcome any means which would increase his efficiency as an industrial worker, since such increased efficiency would benefit alike employer and employee. That's a cap.
Yes, it is.
That's a cap.
Knowing that they make up the majority of the workforce.
That's a cap.
Yeah.
and he also said in the previous page they preferred white laborers over so-called ebony men with all the skills who have been working in those fields for decades, possibly centuries.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, right.
All right. Super capping.
And the
Okay.
whites came here that they had no skill set whatsoever.
Now, this is interesting. The question may be solved, however, by the erection of cotton mill in Anniston, Alabama. I guess we didn't do good job at cotton mills
Not
either.
good. Oh wow! Which the reason we always did good of it because that was our indigenous trade practice
Right.
long before the settlers even came here.
To be owned and operated entirely by colored persons. It is intended to employ about 100 persons in the start, but even if successful, the possible consequences of such forced conditions of Negro labor give reason to grave consideration. From all that has been shown in regards to the physical deterioration wherein in contact with the forces of competitive life in large cities and subject to the conditions of city life, it would seem absolutely certain that the employment of Negroes in cotton mills will materially shorten his duration of life. I concur. So
Mhm.
far as I would take into consideration only Negro in the South, if we now consider the industrial capacities and tendencies of Negro in the North, we must also draw a conclusion from very limited statistical facts. The North, the Negro rarely cultivates the ground.
Because
Let's
we
go.
use machinery. That's why.
Few farmers employ Negroes, and the inclination of the latter is too strongly in the direction of city life to make useful workers on the farm. The first part of the work on the North, the great majority of the Negroes live in the cities where they can be crowded into most undesirable sections. It would only be in the nature of things that we should find them occupied in vocations with which are in harmony with the condition of the life. Okay. So New York from 1892, it is possible to obtain a far ideal of how the various occupations are distributed amongst the colored population of some principal cities. New York City and Brooklyn, and no returns have been made public for these cities. Okay, here we go. In the
All right.
following table, I have consolidated the returns of occupations of 1,300 colored males living in 6 cities in state Syracuse, Albany, or Albany,
Buffalo, I believe.
Buffalo, Auburn. You got an
Um,
Auburn in New
yeah,
York?
yeah, that's
Wow.
Germantown. Yes, that's Germantown.
Okay. Utica.
Utica.
Okay, I've heard of that. And
That's Swedish town. Um,
Binghamton.
yeah, Beaverton.
Okay, let's look at what they say. So let me blow this up, and you tell me what you think of it.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me minimize it a little bit too big. All right.
Laundry workers was a specialty. That should be higher than that.
Okay.
Lively men, that should be higher than that. Mason men should be way higher than that. Managers, merchants, mattress makers. We were the only ones that make mattresses around the damn country.
Okay. So he's
You know,
capping.
yeah, like people don't realize that majority of mattresses came from New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, as well as I think Connecticut, and was made by the hands of the Negro.
I don't know if he's being honest on the coachman because it seems like with Harlem
Yes,
being the city of destination, which the overpriced housing, of course, they
yeah,
gouge the people in Harlem, but there should be more than 37 coachmen that are so-called
way
black.
more than that. Yeah, they way more than that. He undercut the numbers.
Policemen only one.
That's
Mm,
bullshit.
I agree with that.
But I say one thing. I tell you one thing. There were more black peace officers than policemen. A lot of people don't know the difference. Peace officers don't carry guns,
Yeah, they carry the nightsticks.
right? So
And
the
that
police, and not to mention, back in the day, a police officer that was black cannot arrest a white person, male or female, that committed heinous acts of crime. They couldn't do it. They would have to get a white officer to do it. But in New York, that's a different story. So this is New York. So
leaving laborers out of the consideration, we find that waiters are in the majority. Waiters. Okay.
What?
They said, leaving laborers out of the consideration, we find that waiters are in the majority.
That's
Next comes
bullshit.
cooks, then caterers.
Oh my God. You know, cooks and caterers came from the West Indies around that time frame, right?
Did not know that.
Yes.
That
Because,
means
like I said,
they own their own businesses then.
yes, because at that time, black males left the cook and catering league and they went to industrial work.
Right.
That's where the money is. So,
So,
like, well, if I could earn more money being a machine operator or machinist,
yep,
or working a sewage plant, or working a railroad,
I'm going to do it.
I would fucking do it versus being a cook.
If I can make, let's say, in 1894,
Mm-hmm.
$4,000 a year,
Yeah,
I don't know if that would be I'm just throwing it out there. And all I
yeah,
have to do is lay down concrete
right.
versus $300 a year being a cook. I'm probably going to lay concrete.
Yeah,
Just saying. So
either
you're
being
saying,
a carpenter, like a carpenter made like $2,000 a year. You
so
know,
you're saying he's,
the average person only getting $300 to $500 a year.
so he's super capping on this
Yeah,
on New York. All right, let's minimize that. A comparison might be made between occupations followed by the Indians on the New York reservation. So that would be your Chinnecocks, that would be uh, your Blackfoots, that would be your not Mohegans, because Mohegans were based in Connecticut. That
Connecticut.
would
Yeah,
be different Native Indigenous tribes, one
yep,
of which actually greeted the first settlers that were pilgrims, and they were
right.
so-called ebony.
Yep.
And the name slips my mind, but I did a video on Thanksgiving, and you guys want to see the tribe that I'm talking about, they're in there. But okay, New York reservations, but the conditions of the course are not exactly similar. In general, taking the Negro as we find him, the Indian on the state reservations, the comparison will result in favor of the latter. Along the line of greater economic usefulness and the advancement in individual prosperity. That's not true.
Nope.
Of
Not
the
even close to it.
1,738 Indians employed in various occupations, 590s were farmers, 720 are laborers, 32 carpenters, 10 mechanics,
That's
185.
BS. BS. A
Yeah.
lot of Native Americans were not farmers. They worked in industrialists. They worked in iron steels. They weld. They
Mm-hmm.
worked in machines just like the regular ebony folk. Um, that and mechanics and basket makers. That was a female trade, by the way. Lumbermen, they did do that.
Yeah. But I'm looking at this, and he says the reservation cultivated during 1889 and 90, 20,763 acres of land. Well, it's their land anyway.
Yeah,
So raised
duh.
97,877 worth of agricultural produce and owned 128,120 worth of livestock and 63,159 worth of agricultural implements, which they got from land grant colleges.
Yeah,
The total value of these lands owned by them being about 5,200 was 1,800,700 in 1890. This is in New York, and
yeah,
personal property of 1,309,493.
yeah. But those reservations don't even exist anymore. There's only a handful of reservations in New York State now.
Really,
Yeah,
most of them emerge into cities, more than
right.
likely.
Yeah, that's pretty much what they did because, like I said, you earn more money living in the damn city than living in the reservation and getting financially taxed. Even though you're supposed to be tax free under the peace treaty, but like I said, that's been compromised in the year 1871, 30 years earlier. Oh, no, sorry, not 30 years earlier. What you would call it? Like 20 years earlier, 19, 20 years earlier. So they.
Okay. In law, as well as in medicine, instances of such difficulties are not infrequent. A few years ago, colored physicians brought suit against the postgraduate hospital of New York City because, according to his statement, admission was refused. So he was refused admission on
Mhm.
account of his color. In other cases, a young Negro lawyer was refused admission to law schools and Association in New York City. Now that's true.
Yes.
That's true.
That's why you
So,
see a lot of black law firms to this very day over in New York City.
mhm. And you also had New York doctors,
Right.
some boule that were so-called black men
Man,
that
yeah.
actually helped form uh, some of your hospitals and hospital systems all throughout the southern states in
States,
order
yes.
to remedy some of the issues. But yes, New York did not admit so-called black men into hospitals for the most part. So
No.
where were they being treated? And remember, we were talking about healthcare with your healthcare system, and you discussed that many so-called black men were just flat out refused, black women too, from
Yes.
getting access to hospital and hospice care.
So what ends up happening, they go to their private practice.
Hmm.
And that's how they got treated. That's how they got treated. And as far as your local communities at the time, there were like several different doctors, pediatricians, medical surgeons. But yet these black surgeons were obligated to treat a white patient before a non-white patient. This was very common. And matter of fact, if you try to treat a Irish patient, you lose your job. See, a lot of people don't know that the Irish were treated like dogs. Actually, they were treated worse than the black people. And I don't know how the hell the Irish forgot all about that. But
Well, people like to conveniently forget things.
I mean, this went on to the 1990s. So it's not that long ago. Like people think that the 1990s was not 19 centuries ago. This happened like 3 decades ago. So from 1990 to 1999, you were still being treated like dog shit.
So what always puzzles me is that you have a lot of these people, and I've talked to individuals that work in
Mhm.
hospitals, black
Right.
men and black women, and they will make lewd jokes about so-called black men not being able to afford the egregiously high cost of healthcare and healthcare treatment.
Right.
Okay, you discussed that it costs 6,000 or 8,000, whatever it was, for you to get what the milk for the newly
The
born
baby.
infant.
Yeah, it would cost you like a total of I think $18,000, $8,000 to deliver the baby,
Wow.
and then like another $10,000 to get the milk delivered, or for you to breastfeed your child. $10,000,
Mm,
and that's not accounted for if you have to use the amulet. To
that's
have the
15.
ambulance. Yeah, that's $15,000.
Trust me, I have my ex-girlfriend had to use an ambulance. She played a sport,
Mm-hmm.
and she hurt her knee. She was doing intramural because she couldn't quite walk onto the team that year. She did make it, but she hurt her knee. As you
Mm-hmm.
know, body physiology, women have completely different physiological structure than we have, so they tend to have more knee injuries
Yes,
due
and
to
they
just
tend
your
to
shape.
be. Yeah, not that they're not unsymmetrical; they're asymmetrical.
Right. So she
So
hurt
they
her
tend.
knee.
Yeah,
So she got rushed to the hospital and got that 15 rack bill.
yeah. Like then you could buy a pre-owned car with that money.
Yeah. But she's kind of tall. So at the end of the day, she's 6 feet.
Yeah.
So as most women that tall, they're gonna have a lot of knee issues. My aunt
Yeah.
has knee issues. She's 6'4".
Mm-hmm.
So shouts out to my aunt. She was a hooper back in the day.
Yeah. They get knee and ankle issues.
Uh, she had knee issues.
Wow.
She had really bad knee. To this day, my aunt still has knee issues from
Right.
basketball and volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
But she loves volleyball and basketball. She loves volleyball because of the uniform. She thought they were cute.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, he's capping yet again.
Mm-hmm.
But good grief, $18,000 to deliver a baby?
Yeah, $18,000 to deliver the baby.
Jeez. Now that's just highway robbery. That is
Dude,
highway robbery.
I'm trying to figure out how the hell whites could afford it. But then again, that explains why the white birth rate dropped. And the black birth rate and the Latino birth rate in the United States kept going.
And he,
They like I told them, they must have, like, their pediatrician must have birthed their children for them during the 1800s all the way up to the 1950s, 1960s.
yeah, some seems cap about that. But here's something, right? Let me blow this up for you guys.
Hold on a second, I'm going to get the bathroom real quick. I'll be right back.
All right. So while he's going, we'll read this. Wealth. Okay. Nope. Don't go there. All right. White men have risen to wealth and fame through the very classes of labor which we foolishly despise as menial. And they are bringing science and art into these today and evaluating them beyond our reach. In my boyhood days, the household servants of the wealthy in this section of the country were colored. But now one finds the trained white servants. Okay, you had white servants, and this guy, versed in the household science and domestic art. Then the ribbons of the private equipage were held by colored hackmen.
All right. Whew. All right.
So this little section right here,
yeah,
he's talking about white people working as house servants.
yeah,
Now, he said in the past, basically colored were working in that position. And basically he's trying to establish like a prestige or a je ne sais quoi or a sophisticated coolness or a kind of air of aristocracy and
Oh my God! There's nothing aristocratical being a servant, a housemaid.
but they're well trained, as he says this. They're well trained white servants versed in household science and domestic art.
Bullshit. That's like the biggest lie I've ever heard of my entire human existence.
I mean, this is literally what he said. I'm not making it up. He said this.
He tried to say that white males and white females are like Alfred from Batman.
Yeah.
That's bullshit.
However, you have many indentured servants that actually came over that were so-called white that did work in manors and houses. We look at George Washington.
Yeah.
George Washington, President Washington, and of course, you said this. You have 14 other presidents that actually were presidents before you had the official George Washington taking the throne.
No, it was 8. Yeah, it was 8.
14.
Yeah. So
okay, we'll go 8.
Yeah, 8 was originally black presidents, and each one, minus the last one, was John Hampton.
Okay.
John Hampton served 1 term. He should have won the second term, but they awarded the de facto president, the first president of the United States, George Washington.
Yeah, but George Washington.
Yeah, go ahead.
George Washington had white slaves.
Yes, he had white slaves and black slaves.
Yep.
He had black slaves in Jamaica, white slaves in Virginia. A lot of people don't know this.
Yeah, they don't know. So we're going over, and I guess they were the air of sophistication and coolness, I guess. I don't know.
And by the way, he adopted them as his children because he couldn't have children at the time with his wife because George Washington has lupus. And
Mm.
so now this is how he had his first biological child in Jamaica. His maid was a young 23-year-old Jamaican maid,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not mistaken, and she gave him a herbal tea drink. Most drinks were supplements at the time. Most supplements were drinks, like, and told him to drink this to get rid of the lupus around his face because you could visually see it. Cure it, made him fertile again, and he. Long story short, he did have interracial sex with this maid of his for years, and they produced a son that looks just like George Washington, but the same complexion as Barack Hussein Obama.
Mm.
Now there was a TV special that happened on the History Channel back in 2007, 2008. They only aired it 3 times, and by the third time, because it sparked up controversy, because they did DNA tests on George Washington, both white and black side, and they
Oh yeah,
realized
yeah.
that both sides are biologically related, 110%. And because, like I said, George Washington never had white children; he had a mulatto child, and a lot of the people of that was colleagues with George Washington was infuriated with George Washington's biological biracial child because he gets to go to college for free, and he got in there because his father's notoriety. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I would take advantage of that shit too.
Yeah.
It is what it is, but they showed jealousy towards George Washington and his offspring, and not to mention his slaves was adopted his children. They were adopted children. They were getting the exact same parental treatment.
That's facts.
Yeah. So same thing with Benjamin Franklin. They did a DNA test of the black portion of his family, which, like I said, Ben Franklin never had children, if I'm not mistaken, on the white side. He only had biological children, multiple children, by the way, by multiple black mistresses and harlots.
Oh yeah.
And
Probably some little underage kids too.
oh yes,
Knowing him.
same thing with Thomas Jefferson and Andrew Jackson.
Man, we already know Jefferson was on something.
Oh my goodness, yeah, and
He had his main chick.
yeah, like people don't understand how racist Jefferson is.
Oh
Well,
my
like
gosh.
you should, like majority of their children were male.
But
And
guess what?
a
Jefferson did kill the central bank. And I'll give him a mini clap for that.
mini clap, but he did a permanent kill.
Nah, he didn't. It came back.
No, yeah, it came back.
It came back.
Yeah, and he didn't do nothing once they came back. Like, oh, so that was a publicity stunt. That was a temporary stunt.
So in March 1865, Congress incorporated the Freedmen's Saving and Trust Company. Now, in a previous video, I discussed the postal saving system.
Yeah.
And of course,
that was the first public bank, right?
Yes. Shouts out to the Freedmen's Saving and the Postal Saving System. And in June 1874, the bank was closed. See, that is true.
Why, right? Because that bank actually protected its actual citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when the central bank came in. Because 1865 was the end of the Civil War. That bank came around, I don't know if it's around roughly August or October that year.
Yeah.
But it came around that year, and it for almost a decade, it was building up the economy. It played a major role of the Reconstruction. But even though the Reconstruction was a failed attempt, and the cultural aspect to solve this cultural disparity between the Negro and the white. But when it came to, like, say, skilled trade vocational schools being erected left and right, not everybody had to be a slave of agricultural slavery, because that was a dying breed. Because they realized that, hey, I could use machines to tend wheat, to collect rice, to tend to the sugar and whatnot. Why should I bend my back, blister my legs and my feet for hours on end
Yeah,
when I could? Yes,
stoop
yes,
labor.
labor. So it actually got rid of stoop farm labor.
Yeah. So the bank was organized for the purpose of meeting the economic and commercial wants of free people for the
Correct.
safekeeping of pay and bounty money of
Thank
the
you.
of the colored soldiers and
Hmm.
charitable purposes. From its modest beginnings, the institution grew, the institution of respectable profits, and they had $35 million of deposits. You inflate that, do the interest, and that's a way lot more. The bank failed on the account of inefficiency, dishonesty of management. The amendment to the charter had been obtained in Congress in 1870, which embodied a radical and subsequent experience proven hurtful change in the character of the securities in which the trustees were empowered to invest the deposits of the institution. The change opened the way for speculative loans, offered opportunities for easy infidelity to official trusts, and invited the class of borrowers hurtful and dangerous to fiscal institutions. Now, what is not actually mentioned, because this is probably before the comptroller of the currency.
Yes.
Okay, so what we're going to, look into, which is he doesn't know yet, was that the Freedmen's Bank, a portion of it, wasn't lost, was actually used to help fund World War II, and they
Right.
never gave that money back.
No, they
And
never did.
all types of interest is actually owed on that Freedmen's Bank money. But
There's trillions of dollars. There's like not tens of trillions. There's like nearly hundreds of trillions of dollars of today's money. That's old. This is why when you hear people talk about reparations, taxpayers too much money. Okay, why are we paying Indian reservations reparations? Why are we paying the reparations of people of Israel?
yeah,
You
they
understand
don't
what I'm saying?
they don't
They're,
know
they're
what to
like,
say when it comes to that.
think about it. You giving them $48 billion a year in Israel. Did you know that's $10,000 a month per woman and child and man? Either
Yeah,
you serve the military or not, you're getting $10,000 to $40,000 a month, give or take. Really? Why my taxpayer dollars paying for that? I'm paying for a Jewish colonization of Palestine. That's basically what you tell them. And it's not a knock against Jews, but that's basically what it was. It was colonialization. That's what it was.
and you're also paying for other countries, which they have what's called foreign aid, but it's really welfare. But
Welfare, like the Central Americans, they
you're
get two
paying,
hundred $50 million a year.
you're paying Middle Eastern countries, you're
See,
paying a lot of places.
yes,
It's not just you know, there.
there,
Okay.
no.
So we have information for years 1879 in regards to
Mhm,
accumulation of property by colored population of any southern state and white.
mhm.
So we're going to look at this chart.
Right.
So let's blow it up. All right. So addressing the valuation of property owned by white and colored persons in
Hold on
Georgia.
a second. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. So you telling me whites in 1879 got 219,911,021
Yep.
versus 5,182,398 for colored folk. That's right then and there. Whites were getting their reparations heavily,
Oh yeah. Oh
even
yeah.
though they wasn't even warranted.
Now, we all know in the book White Trash by Eisenberg, she
Oh yeah,
discussed
I gotta get that book. I gotta get that book. I read it
she
once. I gotta get it.
she discussed Georgia. Georgia
Mhm.
was actually founded as a state for free
Free
white
people.
people, free
Right.
white people and some free colored people also, but mostly for white.
Hmm.
And what happened is they didn't want to actually do the labor on the land per se.
No.
So you had an individual, John Locke, who was actually the governor of a state,
And
and
the
you
slave
had
owner.
the lumberlands of North Carolina, and he
Right.
didn't
Yeah.
want Georgia turning into North Carolina,
No.
into a slave holding state. However, he was also an investor, and he was made governor, and he was investor of the trading company called the Dutch East Indian Trading Company, and they end up bringing so-called white, some prisoners, some criminals,
Right.
over to United States in Georgia, and they brought some ebony people, some indigenous prisoners of war, some Choctaw, some Cherokee, etc., etc., and they put them into bondage, but they gave indentured bond contracts to so-called white people or persons, and after a certain amount of years, they gave them the land.
Right. For
So
free. Free
for
and clear
free,
with money.
for free, with state grants, which
That's
help
right.
get them training for different jobs. And I believe different politicians that were so-called black talked about how they were undergirding the poor. As we talked about, I think King said something about this also. Martin King, Michael Lewis said something
Right.
about this, how he undergirded the poor with land grants to teach them how to mechanize their farms. So, yep, there you go. Boom. But this was during a period called the Silver Era, when a lot of black people accumulate a lot of land and they were generating a lot of profit. And that
Mhm.
now I know he's capping a little
Now,
bit on
now,
some of
no,
this.
no, yeah, but these monies were self-made profits. They was
Hmm.
again, these were not grants given to them. Black people, they were owed grants, but they were never handed to them. That was supposed to be the premise of the Reconstruction period. And you go back up a little bit. Yeah, this is supposed to be the okay, yeah, during the Reconstruction, they should have been getting this amount, but instead, this is the only little part that is accurate what he did.
Okay.
But here's the crazy part with these grant money that, like I said before, if you look at the infrastructure of the South today, it's still technically in a third world mess.
Hmm.
Now you got migrants that have to migrate from the north to the south to help to build modern infrastructure, and that happened throughout the 20th century. Okay, that means that they have to like convert a lot of rural areas where the white population actually never thrive better in the rural areas. They actually they they basically wither and die. They had to modernize it and put modern infrastructure, modern schools, modern what you would call it, transportation infrastructure, airports, um, trains, railways, and cargo shipping um, facilities and places where to build them in the 20th century, around the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Facts.
And, and 70% of them were built by black men's hands.
Yep.
So prior to that, we talk about billions of dollars here from 1879 to 1895. That's 15 years. What did they did with that money? Because it still looked like a dust bowl down south at that time frame.
I don't know, but they were holding on to this land.
Yeah, they were holding on to this land that was stolen.
Yeah.
Because today you see every folk taken to them to court and get their money back and their land back that they stole. Now, fortunately, they can't get, not all of them get all their land back because a lot of them got converted to highways and railways.
Yeah.
So they have
Th-
to pay back in money and with interest.
that's what I actually forgot. John Locke, and then you had Oglethorpe. Oglethorpe was a prison reformist in
Right.
England, and he wanted uh, to reform the prison system. So he's like, look, just send them over to Georgia. So,
Yep.
and you know who told me that? I was actually at the library. I go to, well, I used to go to when they open it up. Now, it's kind of hard to get in there because library's not open
Hmm.
often. So you gotta catch it some days. Some weeks it's open, some weeks it's not. But I went to the library and they actually had a book reading of White Trash.
Right.
And it was a guy from Georgia that actually told me, that white guy told me about Oglethorpe. So that was interesting. I
Yep.
had to read up on him. So sometimes, people can tell you the truth.
Truth. Yeah. They tell you.
Let's minimize that. So, assessing the valuation of property per capita valuation in
So they talk
18.
about how many populations. So
Yeah.
1,800, 816,906 attain a property value worth of 233,170,000.
Mm-hmm. So $285 per capita,
Yes. So
right?
in today's population, and I guess in Georgia, the white population, that's less than 1%. That's less than 1% of the population
Right.
that attained this money still on
Mm-hmm.
stolen land. Because how the hell did this so-called rich investor attain this huge lot of money? Unless that's government money
Mm-hmm.
that he stole and awarded these small percentages of whites. Because, like I said before, the vast majority of whites died within a 4-year period. And in the year 1865 alone, over 800,000 people died, and that's in 1 year. That's not counting the 3 previous years during the start of the Civil War.
So in essence, they were undergirded intentionally to be in the place that they're at. They were given.
Yes,
They didn't earn.
yes, they never earned. They were placed there. They
Mm-hmm.
were assigned buffer class with money and wealth. Because you got to remember, the moment the Civil War was over, nothing but masses of bankruptcies all over the former Confederacy states. Now, Texas never got affected by it because Texas was not part of the Confederacy. A lot of people keep making that mistake, saying that they were part of the Confederacy. No, Texas was not part of the Confederacy. Texas was its own independence. The,
Yeah.
the, the main the main traditional Confederacy southern eastern states like Florida, the Virginias, the Carolinas, Kentucky, um,
Tennessee.
Tennessee, Georgia, Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi, they got all this money, but only a token portion of these white populations ever got the money. They got all that land. There's vacant land with their name on it. I'm reading up on people, elderly people, family names that, hey, they own this land outright, and they got their land stolen during the 1940s or the 1950s, 1960s, in some cases in the early 1970s.
Yeah.
And now they're taking these white families to court and suing the heck out of them and getting their land back. And the ones that can't get the land back, because like I said, you cannot terraform a highway or interstate back into a world land no more. You just can't. Don't make no sense. It's too little too late.
Well,
But
they'll
the
use
family has to award them the money with interest that they stole from them.
they'll use what's called eminent domain, but they were given money,
Yeah,
and you were right. They would have to pay money on interest for
yes,
what they actually earned, which some don't. They don't have it. It's
yeah,
gone.
yeah, it's gone. So what that happens is the state or the federal government will have to pay the family.
Yeah, because they did take the land
Yes,
and make a highway.
right?
Which you know what? I should do a video on that. but I'll have to go to the library and actually get this book and break that book down. And I'm gonna give you a little preview. That well, I should. Okay, fuck it. In Detroit, there was an area called Paradise Valley, and the very virulent racist Chrysler and Ford
Right. This is when
actually,
Henry Ford was still around.
yeah, Chrysler actually bulldozed Paradise Valley, which was an area where so-called black people lived. It had
Yeah.
jazz clubs. It
Yeah,
had
that was a big suburb at the time.
it had all types of yeah, university, it had banks, it had its own post office. It was nice. It was a valley.
Yeah.
And it was a segregated area, but black people were very fluent. Some of your top performers would actually come there, jazz, they had a baseball park, all sorts of really cool things. And they actually they tore it down and made a 2.39-mile highway. And you'd be like, why is there a
Wow.
highway
Highway that small.
right in the middle of downtown Detroit? And it's only 2.9 miles. It's big as hell.
No, they
That's
did that on purpose
that's
to.
Paradise Valley, and that's
Yeah.
a Chrysler Freeway, just in case you want
hmm
to know.
No. Yep.
So if you look on the map, you'll see Chrysler Freeway. They just tore that place down
Wow.
intentionally.
hmm
So I might do something on that one day. And then you also have an area that's very affluent that most people don't know about, but a lot of your rich bourgeois, so-called blacks, came from Illinois because they're tired of segregation. And they
Yeah.
ended up establishing what's called Idlewild in Michigan.
Iowa. Yep.
So a
Wow.
little personal history. I might do a video on that one day,
hmm
but I have to actually go get a lot of research because I don't want to have to do it. So let's finish this chapter out.
hmm
So acres. All right. White person, colored person. So I told you a lot of colored people acquired acres. 698. They had acquired millions of acres of land. If I can remember from White Trash, millions, but they
Yeah.
had to buy it. They had
They
to
have to
buy it,
buy it.
or it was Native American land that they were able to negotiate treaties or
Yeah.
just held on to.
Inherit.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So you're looking at the vast speculation and valuation of their land that is so-called white and the devaluation of the so-called land that so-called black people owned.
hmm
So doesn't that sound familiar? You have
Yeah.
a black section of town, they'll say, oh, well, house is only worth 15.
Yeah. But yet when you take down your black pictures and put up your white friends' family pictures on there, oh, now your house worth 900.
Yeah. So, okay, so this is North Carolina. So you have colored, you have white, 234,000 million. Excuse me. Oops.
Yeah, 234 million.
All right. So, Virginia, Georgia, they're undergirding this population. So there's almost a $1 trillion right there just with land.
Yeah, that's right.
And this is in 1890. So, so let's see what they're paying taxes wise. So it's only the state of Virginia that these important questions can be answered with the degree of exactness. For North Carolina, my information is limited. The taxes paid for school purposes only. In Virginia, taxes are paid on real estate and personal property on incomes over 600 per annum, and per capita of over 20. Of course, you got to be 21 years of age. The aggregate amounts received for these sources are given in the table below, which covers 5 years. Let's see what the table says. All right. So assess taxes. All right. Now that's interesting in Virginia.
Yeah.
While whites paid in 1895 the assess for 1,808,000 of taxes, the colored population were assessed only 174. It is not possible to get the exact amount of taxes actually paid, but I've been favored with a letter from Mr. Horton Mayer, the auditor of public accounts of Virginia, which enables me to present the following facts bearing on this point. In 1895, the whites failed to pay 55,233
Oh, I get it now. They start losing the fucking money when they couldn't pay the damn taxes on time. So after 15 years, now just hold on. After 15 years, by 1895, all that land was vacant once again. So when, because they gave a total of nearly $1 trillion.
Right.
I'm sorry, nearly $1 billion. My bad, nearly $1 billion. So we talk about over 900 million plus. And over a 15-year period, they couldn't keep up with the property taxes. Where the black population of that exact same period managed to maintain that value proposition.
Oh, yeah. Because they're actually turning a profit and capitalizing on the land more. So
because they build oil mines, coal mines, gold, silver. There were some diamond mines that was discovered in like certain states like North Carolina, South Carolina. They had fishing ports, so they had to like take advantage of that. That's very interesting.
And I know with the Rosenwald schools, he actually would put up half of the funding for their schools.
Right.
Okay. All they had to do is come up with the other half. And most, as we discussed in Mohawk Conference, most black men would be forced, well, not forced, but kind of guided, well, not really guided, kind of based on economic forces, would leave high school or middle school or elementary school in about 3rd or 4th grade, and they would go work in the trades and skills because they can make more money than wait around in schools, which women didn't have the physical capability to actually do a lot of hard manual labor. So the men would go work in factories and all types of physical labor, and the women would go through and matriculate through school as they always did. So when I'm looking at the color population and monies for education, I'm like, okay, they have a lot of men working, so that chart may not be completely accurate, but a lot of men were not in school, and some were migrating slowly up north into bigger cities, because you had people that were black, they were still living in the South, but they may left, let's say Moreno County, to go to Birmingham, which is in a completely different county in Alabama. And they would send money back to their wife. So that's not a completely accurate chart.
Right. No, it's not even remotely accurate. Like, oh, they make it seem like they went north, like in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Connecticut, and Michigan. Like, no, they went to a northern city within that state.
And we only have 19 pages left, and I think I'll just save that for another video.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah, because that's 19. We only had 19, and I'll just kill that in another video. So if you guys like this content, please go to GW3's Extreme channel, subscribe, hit the like button, give donations if you like what he is putting out. He puts out some good heat. All right. Okay, get him up to 1 million subscribers. Get him up there, because he's putting out some really good information that you guys need to know. He's very well researched. He is impeccable with his research, impeccable with the information that he gives you. Don't come with the trolls. Don't come with the trolls.
Yeah, I hate that. Like, I was doing the video not last night, on Friday, when I finished the final chapter of the history of the American healthcare. And there's this weird bot. No bots, no trolls. Please. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. I had one guy came up when I did, I think was it weekly update number 47, 48, talking about you black men always harassing Hispanic women. Like, look, get the hell out of my face with that nonsense. Like, I don't have time for that. Okay.
Yes.
I'm not even talking about, I'll talk about just the book that I'm doing that I just finished just 48 hours ago. You know, that I always beat that old horse to death. Okay, I beat that horse, and now that exact same character is harassing NBD. Now those videos I had, they're not on my channel no more. They are at Free Speech Adventure TV. That's where I kept them at.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But don't troll this guy.
So,
all right.
yeah.
I had trolls, and they trolled me on my Dub the King of Scotland video, and they trolled me mercilessly. I literally had to. I don't believe in deleting people's comments because if a racist person wants to come on my page and leave all types of stupid stuff on there, all right, whatever. You got a freedom to be as dumb as you want to be. Mm-hmm. You can say whatever dumb stuff you want to say, go ahead. But people that are in the know that you don't know what you're talking about. And They actually are far more disgusted at you than of me, because they can see that I actually did the time to research, just as GW3 does, information. Yeah. And they'll go, this guy knows what he's talking about. That white guy doesn't know what he's talking about, because he's just trolling. Mm-hmm. So check out GW3's weekly update 46, 47, 48, 49, and 50. And what was the one that you dropped yesterday? 50 or 51?
51. Yeah,
51. 51 breaks down the book. And what's the book called?
The book called The Hidden History of American Healthcare: Why the Sickness Bankrupts You and Makes Others Insanely Rich, by Thom Hartmann. And that's a great book. The Man of Tomorrow was on the live stream that day on Friday night, and
MOT was there.
Yeah, he was there. I was shocked because I haven't seen him on my channel in a long time. I know he's been busy, but I know he says he listens to my my stream every now and then. He don't have time to comment, but I broke down how the financial infrastructure should work if we do a single payer system, and there were like 3 suggestions I broke down. And I said each suggestion should be used per generation, for the simple fact that you're not going to get a perfect shot, one shot fits all. It's not going to work like that. There's a lot of infrastructure stuff that we need to attend here, as well as a single payer healthcare system. So it's going to take like at least 3 generations to get it going. And I broke it down. Like I said, the systemic racism is behind why we don't have a true healthcare system here. It's why our infrastructure is trash. It's why our educational system, doesn't matter you go to a black school, white school districts, is garbage. Okay? It's why why we have an industrial prison complex, because our school system modeled the industrial prison complex, believe it or not, from 1867 all the way to the present. So they're all interconnected. They're all interconnected big time.
So what you need to do, if you're listening to this, you watch his weekly update. I always tell brothers, when someone puts something out that's that important, take your computer, go to the Walmart or to Micro Center, get yourself a flash drive or external hard drive, plug it in, download the video, MP3 and video. All right. Or if you just want to do MP3 because it's a smaller file, go do that. Store it offline, please. And if you don't think I didn't store the stuff offline, I got it stored offline. I downloaded and I actually worked out to one of the videos, and I was listening to it, one of the weekly updates. So it's a great workout if you want to put your miles in, if you want to actually study while you're getting your health right. If you just want to listen to it while you're at your job, go ahead, put it in, get your truck routes going, listen to what he's dropping, and if you want, go get the book also, because don't let this guy and donate to this brother's page because he's putting in some classic heat, man. If you can put your what's your Snapchat? Not Snapchat, your Cash App. What's your Cash
Oh,
App?
I don't have a cash app yet. I got a quick one. I've been, like I said, between me moving to this new location, I haven't even got a chance to develop a cash app yet because
Okay.
I was going to do it originally, but I had a feeling that people wasn't taking my channel seriously. I just got people that was bandwagoneers that would, come in and subscribe to my channel, watch my stuff for like at least a good 5 to 6 months, my video catalog, and then come in and want to attack my character.
Okay.
And I'm like, that's a waste of time. That was a waste of time. So, but I'm eventually going to develop a cash app. I'm going to have to go through that process. Once I get that started, I'm just going to just set up my live streams. I was like, look, I don't care if you give me $1 or $500. If I'm going to do a cash app, it's got to be some form of financial commitment.
You
I'm not
should
even asking
also
a whole lot.
have a Patreon. Get yourself a Patreon if you don't have one,
Yes.
because I haven't seen you.
Oh no, I got
I haven't seen you on
Patreon.
Patreon. Okay.
Yeah, I got formulate a Patreon account. I got to put down my account information and everything to get Patreon really started. Because there's videos that there's books I got right now that I want to do, but no on YouTube, they'll flag it down and put it out. And free speech adventures don't have the wide acclaim notoriety like YouTube, so I could put down the link 24/7 if if I got like 458 subscriber base, where at one point I used to have nearly 7,000, and that went by after my channel got terminated in 2018.
So what you should do is, when you're going to set your Cash App up, get the card. All right. And then what you want to do is you can go add some money at, you have a Cash App load center, and you just put in your local map when you get your Cash App, and it will actually send you to different destinations where you can load money up on it and get reference. So find people with Cash App and, you know, and say, hey, if you're interested in setting up a Cash App and you're one of my subscribers, boom, here's my reference code, 10 to 15 bucks. You get that put in your account, so you can actually build up referencing people with Cash App, and they can donate money straight back to you just by clicking on that link. And they don't have to do anything. So that's also a very good thing. And on top of all that, when you get that Cash App, or you set everything else up, because some of the stuff you're doing, I donate to Tito, I donate to people that have valuable info. I'll send you some, because some of this stuff that you're putting up, man, I've been trying to find a way to donate to you, man. You got to put it up, man. Come on, man.
Yeah,
We need
I got to do it. Yes, I got to do it.
All right. But go on my main man, what's my man? Reluctant Nabi. Reluctant Nabi. When you do
I haven't heard of him in like a couple of years.
Yeah, he's still doing his thing. He just keeps gonna get his channel taken down. But when you set everything up, go on there, and then announce every single thing, and people donate, because he got some loyal people over there with him, and they love your stuff. Trust me, when I mention your name over there, they love what you're doing. Everybody respects you. Like, you're loved in this space, man. We respect you, man. I watch all your stuff all the time. You already know who I am.
Yeah.
But man, keep on doing your thing, man. Have a great day, and
All right.
I'm out, bro.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
All right. Peace.
Peace.